Let's go ahead and begin. Ms. City Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Mayor Pro Tem Sanchez,
Here.
Councilmember Ibarra,
Here.
Councilmember Figueroa,
Here.
give me 1 second. Okay. Councilmember Surratt,
I'm here.
Councilmember Nickel,
Here.
Councilmember Richard,
Here.
and Councilmember Mulvihill,
Right here.
Mayor Valdivia.
Present. Thank you, Ms. City Clerk. Today we'll begin our closed session portion of tonight's regularly scheduled meeting. On the docket will be items A and B. Ms. City Attorney, if I may, as we had discussed, we'll conclude with those. So why don't we carry on with items C, D, and E? But before we begin, Ms. Rocha, is there any public comments for closed session?
There are not any public comments.
All right, thank you. With that noted, we'll proceed right into item number.
Flag. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Ms. Councilmember Richard. Appreciate it. Thank you for leading us to Pledge of Allegiance tonight. Ms. City Attorney, is there anything to report out from closed session?
Mayor and council members and members of the public who are watching, we had several closed session discussions this evening, but we do not have any reportable action.
Thank you. All right, moving on to our presentation portion for tonight. We have two items, Route 66 complete street improvements. And then secondly, by our San Bernardino Police Department mid-year review. At this time, the city manager, Route 66 Caltrans presentation.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to turn it over to our Public Works Director, Chris, so she can introduce the folks that will be presenting tonight.
Chris, you're muted.
All right, this is my third Monday this month. I apologize. Good evening, Mayor and council members. Tonight we have members from Caltrans who are here to share some great project information with us that's happening and some things that are going to be potentially happening in the city. So I'm actually going to turn it over to Ms. Rena Tang and let her introduce the rest of the Caltrans team. So.
Hi there. Good evening, everyone. Are you guys able to hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. So I'm Rena Tang, as Chris mentioned. I'm from Caltrans District 8 Planning Division. First off, I'd really like to thank the city and the city council for inviting us to be here tonight. We're really excited to be here to talk a little bit about an opportunity for Caltrans District 8 to apply for the Active Transportation Program. We are looking to apply for funds to make multimodal improvement along Route 66, also known as 5th Street, between the Flores Street to 8th Street, which is under state right-of-way and within the city of San Bernardino limits. While there's still a lot more work for us to do for the application development, my team is here today to highlight some of the key components of what we would like to apply for. We think that these investments will make a big difference for the local community. Without further ado, I will turn it over now to Reina Baeza and Tanya Espericueta to highlight some of those key elements. Next slide, please. Good evening, council members. My name is Reina, and I'll begin the presentation today with community identity, shown here on the slide. As part of our project, we are proposing lighting that will provide a vertical scale at the pedestrian level to improve walkability. We have introduced 2 electroliers, the single acorn light standard seen here in the background, and the King standard lighting seen in the foreground. The pedestrian scale lighting will provide a cohesive and visual connection to the light standards on the recently completed Caltrans project at 5th Street Bridge and Interstate 215 pictured here in this slide, and I'm sure you're all familiar with this location. I'll turn it over to Tanya. Next slide.
Hi, next slide, please. And good evening, Council. My name is Tanya. I'll be going over some of the proposed bicycle and pedestrian improvements, including Class 2 bike lanes, Class 3 bike routes, curb extensions, sidewalks, enhanced crosswalks, as well as transit improvements. Next slide, please. As part of the ATP project, we are proposing 6-foot bike lanes with 2-foot buffers. Benefits of bike lanes are that they facilitate predictable behavior and movement. Bicyclists can ride at their preferred speed without interference from prevailing traffic. Another benefit is that they encourage bicycling from groups that are interested but concerned. This is because the level of stress is reduced on a road with bicycle facilities versus a road with no dedicated bicycle facilities. The additional 2-foot buffer also provides greater distance between bicyclists and vehicles. The buffer also encourages bicyclists to ride outside of the door zone because they have more space with the additional 2-foot buffer. Next slide, please. So for the project where there isn't enough roadway space for a Class 2 bike lane, we're proposing Class 3 bike routes that are identified by the signage as well as Cheryl markings as seen on the photo here. Class 3 bike routes are shared use routes with motor vehicle traffic. Next slide, please. As far as curb extensions for the ATP project, we are proposing curb extensions. The curb extensions visually and physically narrow the roadway, creating a safer and shorter crossing distances for pedestrians. They also tighten intersection curb radii, which encourages slower turning speeds. They serve as visual cues to drivers to slow down, and they also increase the available space for street furniture, benches, plantings, and trees. An example of the curb extension locations are shown here in the layout. This example is on Medical Center Drive intersection. Next slide, please. As part of the ATP project, we're also proposing to enhance existing crosswalks within the project limits. We'll also stripe new crosswalk at certain locations, specifically where the roundabouts are proposed. We'll consider context-sensitive striping at crosswalks that help with community identity where applicable. Next slide, please. For transit improvements, we coordinated with Omnitrans, and they helped identify 7 transit stops that would benefit from enhancements. Ridership data provided by Omnitrans for the month of October 2019 indicates high ridership within the project limits. There was a total of 17,700 boardings and alightings for that month. The highest number in riderships showed that they were at the stops in Medical Center Drive, Mount Vernon, and Garner, which are where we have some of the transit stop improvements. The improvements range from new benches, trash receptacles, and system maps. The project would also construct bus paths. The transit stop improvements are especially important as 7% of workers within the disadvantaged community commute to work by transit, walking, or cycling, which is 52% higher than other census tracts in California. So the need is great. Next slide, please. And next slide. And for roundabouts for the project, we're proposing 2 roundabouts at 2 intersections, Medical Center Drive and Mount Vernon Avenue intersection. The defining characteristics of the roundabout are counterclockwise flow, entry yield control, and low speed, usually between 15 to 25 miles through the roundabout. And per NACTO and FHWA safety countermeasures, roundabouts have demonstrated safety benefits, including lowering speeds, having fewer conflict points, and reduction in severe crashes. Specifically, FHWA cites a 78% reduction in severe crashes when going from a signalized intersection to a roundabout. They also cite fewer conflict points. For example, there are 8 vehicle pedestrian conflict points within a roundabout versus 16 of them at a comparable signalized intersection. There are also 8 vehicle-to-vehicle conflict points within a roundabout versus 32 vehicle-to-vehicle conflict points within a signalized intersection. The roundabouts also benefit pedestrians as they get to cross a shorter distance at a time. Next slide, please. As part of the project, we're also proposing to reduce the existing 4-lane conventional highway with a center 2-way left turn lane to a 2-lane highway with a center 2-way left turn lane and buffered bike lanes in each direction to better accommodate all of its users. The landscape median shown in the image here will only be present at intersections as a separation between opposing traffic. Benefits to a road diet include a reduction in collisions, reduction in right angle crashes, fewer lanes for pedestrians to cross, and additional road space that can be used for bike lanes and curb extension. And per FHWA, the overall crash reduction when implementing a road diet is anywhere between 19 to 47% when going from a 4-lane to a 3-lane. And next slide, please.
Hi, I will now be presenting the proposed landscape elements for this project. And as you can see here, the proposed road diet will facilitate stormwater capture and reduce runoff by implementing curb cuts, bioswales, and curb extensions, as Tanya mentioned. These planted areas will treat, flow, and infiltrate stormwater runoff as it moves downstream. During the design phase, we will determine the specific plants recommended for these bioswales to filter pollutants out before water infiltrates into the soil. Locations where bioswales are not feasible will be planted with ground cover, shrubs, and trees. Next slide, please. The 2 proposed street trees pictured in this slide are consistent with the City of San Bernardino's landscape assessment district and meet the guidance for street tree requirements. The trees will serve multiple uses. They'll facilitate carbon sequestration and they'll mitigate greenhouse gases while enhancing the comfort and attractiveness of the route. The shade street trees will provide a level of protection for pedestrians and bicyclists from the heat, making the route more accommodating, attractive, inviting, comfortable, walkable, and rideable. Next slide. So we've identified 3 future opportunities. First would be the roundabout pop-up event, a gateway monument at 2 roundabout locations, so for a total of 2 gateway monuments, and transportation art on relocated electrical service cabinets. During the later phases of the project, we will continue to engage the community and local stakeholders. We would like to focus on the roundabout design features and provide additional public engagement, and as well as educational awareness to ensure that community members have an opportunity to understand how the roundabouts will function and how to navigate through the roundabout intersections. Additionally, the team would like to apply for the SCAG Go Human campaign to install a temporary roundabout intersection to provide the community with a live demonstration, as seen as the 2 examples in this slide. Next slide, please. So here you have a gateway monument, several gateway monuments actually, and these are all on state right-of-way. A gateway monument is a freestanding structure or sign, a non-required highway feature constructed within the state right-of-way, which communicates the name of the city, the county, or an incorporated town. Gateway monuments are planned, designed, funded, constructed, and maintained by the public agency sponsoring the project. The location of the 2 proposed roundabouts, as Tanya mentioned, on State Route 66, will define the residential areas along the route and highlight the complete streets improvements we're proposing. The proposed traffic calming features will allow for gateway monument installation in the roundabouts because of the slow speed, as Tanya mentioned. Installing gateway monuments in the roundabouts as a follow-up project is an excellent opportunity for the City of San Bernardino to strengthen community identity, as well as strengthen our partnership. Next slide, please. Transportation art is a visual expression that reflects the local community's unique aesthetic, historical, and cultural values. This graphic shown here on the slide is in Los Angeles in District 7, and includes a graphic or can include a graphic or a sculptural artwork, is either freestanding or placed upon a required engineering transportation feature. The proposed project for ATP Cycle 5 on Route 66 will underground utilities and relocate utility boxes, as seen in this slide, there's an opportunity to incorporate community identifying artwork on relocated electrical boxes. In partnership with Caltrans, the City of San Bernardino can engage local artists or volunteers to create a public art piece that can contribute to a sense of place and community ownership. Next slide, please.
So to engage the community, we developed a public survey to gather community input on the active transportation needs the active transportation needs and opportunities along the route. So far, the flyer and survey link have been posted through our District 8 social media account as well as Omnitrans website. We're still working with the school district, Inland Empire Biking Alliance, SBCTA, and the city in getting the flyer and link posted through social media accounts as well as the city's newsletter. We expect to receive more survey responses once it's posted on all the channels. But so far, we've received 14 responses. And of those responses, 64% indicated support for a road diet and 42% indicated support for a roundabout. The survey respondents also indicated that improved sidewalks, lighting, and improved visibility for pedestrians at existing crosswalks would make their experience at 5th Street better. They also indicated that they'd be more likely to walk on 5th Street if there were trees that provide shade, improved sidewalks, and wider sidewalks. Next slide, please.
In conclusion, we'd like to emphasize that the proposed investments in active transportation, along with the strong partnerships, will be transformative for the City of San Bernardino. This project will make lasting improvements to enhance the community, attract new business, and create opportunities for the residents of San Bernardino. And now we'd like to open up for a 5-minute question and answer session.
Okay, thank you very much, presenters, Reina and for Caltrans for making this presentation. We'll open it up to council members and for questions or comments.
I don't have a question. I just have a comment. I wholeheartedly support this. I'm the first ward council member. I'm very familiar with this street, and I have a close understanding of what it is the people in that community want. And what this will help do is help mitigate some of the high-speed traffic on that road. And if people haven't died on that street already, I'm very surprised because they go 80 miles an hour, and at least one side of the street is residential. This is a huge investment in a place that hasn't had much investment, and I would be very, very excited to see this project come before us.
Done.
Thank you, Councilmember Nickel.
Just remind us again, what is the timeline on this, and what community outreach would be engaged? What would be that process and the timeline for that community engagement to really gauge what the public would like to see in terms of what the aesthetics and what would be really acceptable for that community?
Sure. I can go ahead and just real briefly address that, and we can get back to you with more details if you'd like. So this is an application competitive process. The application will be due September 15th per CTC SB1 Active Transportation Program. So we have about another month and a half where we will continue to collect community input on this public survey. And continue to engage the city, Omnitrans, SBCTA, and other local stakeholders for input. If we are awarded, we would like to do additional outreach with the local community, including the educational awareness components for the roundabouts. And we would like to apply for that SCAG Go Human campaign event. If we are successful in that, we would be able to do a live demonstration. A lot of the transportation art elements, particularly within the ATP project, we will be able to do the enhanced crosswalks and incorporate community identifying artwork within the crosswalks. After that, the transportation artwork for the gateway monuments and the relocated electrical boxes, that would come in after the ATP project as a follow-up.
The reason why I was asking, we have a Cultural and Historic Preservation Commission. I think this is an excellent opportunity for them to show some leadership, and I think this is a great project for us to highlight our history and some of the cultural aspects that the city has to offer. So I'd like to see them engaged at some point, and then obviously that particular community as well. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Barr?
Thank you.
I want to say thank you for that presentation, first and foremost. My next question is, are we going to get the presentation provided to us? I know it hasn't been provided. I second what Councilmember Nichol mentioned about possibly also mentioning this to the arts and historical
preservation, historic preservation.
Because they had been talking about decorating some electrical boxes already, and that wasn't moving along. So to include them, that'd be amazing. Maybe do a presentation for them soon. So I am excited for this. I think it's going to be a great addition to our city, especially with Route 66. We need to bring Route 66 back into our city. So thank you, ladies.
Raina, can you please ensure that we get a copy of the PowerPoint emailed to all the council members? We'd appreciate that.
Yes, no problem.
Thank you. Councilmember Mulvihill.
Yeah. Actually, last year, Terry and I and Jim Tickmeyer and Mike Huntley investigated the possibilities of doing a SCAG Go Human event. And we were very much approved at that particular point if we wanted to go ahead with one. So we've already done a little bit of background with regard to that process. So, but obviously this is a different initiative, and I'm very much appreciative that it's going to be pursued. Want to see more of it. Thank you.
Council members, also, Rena, this is an important opportunity. I'll just briefly mention, in my weekly meetup, every 4 to 6 weeks, I meet up with the Caltrans superintendent for coffee, and with COVID, whatnot, those have been impacted. But nonetheless, I think the opportunity remains for us to integrate the centennial celebration of Route 66, which is forthcoming in the next 4 to 6 years. And I have established an ad hoc committee of sorts with the Caltrans department to initiate those conversations. The plug-in opportunity is to integrate this project with the overall centennial as we plan out for the future. So that would be my comment to you as we begin that process, so that we can have those placeholder opportunities to discuss it with more funding opportunities for our community. Finally, I think the community outreach is certainly lacking. I think we need to be robust. We have about 1 more month, and when you look at that segment of the west side of the 215 freeway, we need to make sure that there's outreach opportunities in both languages so that we can maximize the community aspect and the input from them. Certainly the Mount Vernon business corridor would be impacted, and so you want to make sure that you get the businesses along Mount Vernon as part of this outreach. You need to get their input, their insight. The lane closures, the road diet from a 4 to 3 may impact those businesses. And right now, I certainly would like to get their input as to the future of the corridor. That remains a viable historic area, and we want to ensure that we have those business opportunities. And the relevancy of their input will determine our fate, really, as a success for this project. Council members, are there any other members of the council that wish to provide feedback?
I just want to mention something about a road diet, and you just said that reducing the number of lanes is going to cause traffic congestion. Well, in fact, that's the point, in a way, is to slow traffic up and allow more for restaurants, outdoor activities, sidewalk activities, and so people feel safer walking, pedestrian traffic, and so forth. So the idea of adding a little bit of congestion, yeah, that's in fact part of the process of making the streets safer for pedestrians and for bicyclists and for people just on sidewalks.
Okay, council members, Caltrans, we thank you for tonight's presentation. We appreciate your diligent efforts to update our council, and we thank you and look forward to the partnership.
Great. Thank you guys so much for your time. Really appreciate your feedback.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great
Have
night.
a great evening.
Bye-bye. Our second presentation, moving on to a San Bernardino Police Department 2020 mid-year review. Ms. Ledoux.
Thank you. Interim Chief McBride is going to go through his mid-year presentation with you as soon as we pull it up here.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and council members. It's a pleasure to be here and to give you the mid-year report. It's been a challenging last several months with COVID-19. As you all know, the police department is an essential service, so our officers are out there and civilian employees are out there every single day delivering service to the community. It's been a challenge to deliver that service while still trying to make sure that our employees are protected. As you know, you probably read in the newspaper that there are some local agencies in Southern California who have lost members of their department who have died due to COVID-19. So it's been very important for us to mitigate those effects. We've been very lucky, and we've been able to, when we've had someone positive or become sick, that we've been able to isolate those people, keep them away from the rest of the workforce, and prevent a larger exposure within the department. So we've been very fortunate with that because of our mitigation that we've done. So first slide. Now, this is probably going to be the last time that we present on the animal control. I see the city manager smiling, so she knows that too. But I wanted to highlight the things that they've done. They've done a lot of work down there. Adoptions were up because of COVID-19 across the country, and we were also a benefactor of that. People being at home, they want to have someone share the company with them, and so we pretty much kept the shelter cleared out of dogs and cats. So up from from January to June of this year, we adopted out almost 900 dogs, a little over 303 cats, 23 other animals, and those other animals ran the gamut of anything that you can find that's lives in the local habitat to things that you would find elsewhere. I mean, everything turns up at the shelter, it seems. But for a total adoption of 1,224 animals through the first 6 months of this year, which is quite a bit. So they're out there doing a good job. And we also partnered with the Western University to provide low-cost spaying and neutering, which you all know is something that's very important because dogs and cats that are not spayed or neutered contribute to that stray animal problem that we have in the community, which then creates a bigger need for an animal shelter. And we also had one free adoption event during 2020. Despite COVID-19, we were able to adopt that animals. We did it by appointment only so that we didn't have a large number of people that would show up. So that way we'd make sure that both the community and our employees are safe from exposure to someone who may be sick. So I think this will, in the next month or so, maybe, the animal control will be a standalone department within the city. And
the animals, yeah, that's why the last presentation by the police department. Our animal services director will be on board August 17th, and she comes to us with a breadth of experience, and we look forward to having her.
And of course, we will make sure that we're there to help that new animal control director get their feet wet and understand how our shelter operates and what goes on, so they can find out where everything is and stuff like that. So we'll assist with that transfer over. Next slide, please. Volunteer services, we still do have some volunteers despite COVID-19. They've not been able to do a lot, but we currently have 65 members in our CERT team. We have 12 chaplains, and we utilize those quite a bit on critical incidents when we have, a death or something like that. They come out and assist the grieving families and stuff. We have 28 explorers, 13 reserve officers, 13 station volunteers, and those volunteers have assisted in 14 community events throughout this year. Next slide. So this is our budgeting for officers. So you can see this is a 10-year number of officers budgeted plus the number of filled positions. So this year we were authorized at the beginning of the year, 254 officers, but then as you are aware, we received that COPS grant to hire 13 additional officers in our fiscal year 21. And that's a 3-year funding for those officers that will take our number to 267. Now we have 248 as of the end of June, 248 positions filled. Of course, there's always an attrition going on and people retiring and stuff like that. I anticipate that, we'll always have retirements because we have people with 40 years on the department, so they could retire at any time. I'm not going to begrudge them if they want to retire. But that being said, 248 at the end of June, but since June, we've had 4 officers graduate the academy on July 2nd, and 2 additional officers graduate the academy this week, yesterday, Tuesday, from Riverside. So that's 6. So that took us up pretty close to that number. Of course, we had some retirements and some people leave, but it's a number that's always in flux, but we try to keep it as close to our authorized numbers as much as we can. So we'll have those officers, those additional officers. We're looking at putting as many as we can in the next upcoming academies. It looks like towards the end of the year that our local sheriff's academies may not have as many academy classes as they traditionally have, so it might be a little bit of a struggle. But we do have some laterals that are looking to come over to the San Bernardino Police Department, which will be great because it takes away that 6 month of academy time that they have to go through. And then if they have a good number of experience, then we can sometimes shorten that field training program. So it gets those officers in the field much quicker than it normally would take if we have to put them through the whole field training program and an academy. So next slide, please. So grants, as we are very aggressive on our grants. And as I mentioned, we got the COPS hiring grant. On that, I want to say one thing is that I think we're the 6th or 7th roughly highest awarded city in the country. And more officers than a lot of other larger jurisdictions. And I think that goes to the grading formula for that was a heavy emphasis on community policing and whether or not you had community policing and that your structure of your police department supported community policing. So obviously, as you're well aware, you all approved us going to a community policing strategy, which also moved around some personnel and created a structure, a management structure and supervisory structure that supported that COPS philosophy. And really that's, at the end of the day, that's what won out for us. Even though there was some discussion that we lost some positions, in rank, for example, and we promoted some additional people. Because of that, we were able to fund 13 more officers for the city at the department. And we also got the request approved for the waiver of the city's matching funds. So we got 13 additional officers at no cost to the city for the next 3 years. And I think it's solely, you got to pat yourselves on the back because you supported that community policing philosophy. And because of that, we got these positions. So then we have the JAG CESF, and that's the Coronavirus Emergency Supplemental Funds. We received that grant. And then there's still, it's kind of hung up, but we have grant funding coming to us from the JAG, the Burn Justice Assistance Grants from 2017, 18, 19. That totals $533,000. We're still kind of waiting for that money to come. But it's on the agenda tonight also. You'll see it for the Railroad Security Grant, which we awarded. One of only a few agencies in the country that got awarded money for that. And then we have our traditional ABC grant, which goes towards fighting crimes that violate the alcohol beverage control laws, which, it's been a struggle. It's all funds on overtime, but we haven't had a standalone vice team until recently. And that vice team will go out there and we'll really put together some good programs out there to combat some of those problems associated with the ABC licensed businesses that we have. Some of the things that we're going to be using some grant funding for is, of course, the personnel funding and patrol vehicles. One thing that you see coming forward later this month is some patrol vehicles that are paid for under the coronavirus grant. And you would not necessarily associate the coronavirus grant with police vehicles, but these have been especially designed by Ford so that they disinfect the vehicle if you have someone with coronavirus. So, for example, if we have someone who's exhibiting signs or symptoms of the coronavirus, that car will be dispatched to pick that person up. It's especially designed to make sure that the officer doesn't get infected, but then it also self-disinfects itself by some additional software enhancements in the vehicle that allows it to heat itself up to over 130 degrees to kill the virus. So something that will be great for us. Is nothing that I ever thought that I would be buying for a police car, but now we have to think about these things, and that'll be something that we will get for that. We're also, because of the coronavirus, we're looking at creating a far better online reporting system than what we have. We have one, it's useful, it does its job, but I think that there's a lot better mobile applications that we can put out there, and we're going to be going to develop that pretty soon. We're looking at putting it out to bid, and that way. But there's a lot of other things we can do. If someone downloads our app, we'll be able to do push notifications. So if there's an issue, a hazard, or an emergency in their area, we'll be able to push out a notification through that mobile app to them, and they'll also be able to make reports, be able to take pictures if it's graffiti, upload it right into the app, and it goes right into our report software. So it'll be something that now you need to have that. It's something that people really like, and we'll get that. And then also some of these funds that we have from grants will update our emergency and local hazard plans. We get awarded a total of just under $7 million in grants this year. Next slide, please. Our Forensics Bureau, these are people that go out, and the crime scene technicians that go out and process crime scenes such as murders and serious crimes. They responded to 1,605 calls for service in the last 6 months. They lifted 95 latent prints, which were sent to Cal ID for analysis. Of those 95, 78 were analyzed and came back with a hit on a named suspect. No, not every crime scene you go to can you get prints. Not every print is something that will be read by the computer and give you a hit. When I started in policing, they used to do a side-by-side comparison. Now the computer does it in many cases, but so that's a pretty good hit ratio. So they're doing a great job on being able to lift those prints and identify suspects. Our case filing unit is one of those things that we had to launch officially last year. It's we're required now, as we mentioned, to provide discovery and a lot of other information on the front end when we file a case with the district attorney's office. We had to put a unit together to do that, which they handle a tremendous amount of paperwork. They fulfilled during the first 6 months of this year over 2,000 requests for discovery, and they submitted just under 4,000 cases for prosecution. Next slide. So homicides. So for the first 6 months of this year, we had 26 homicides. 20 of those 26 homicides have either been solved as the suspects have either been arrested, identified, or pending further investigations. So from January to June, our clearance rate is 77%. So we're a little bit slightly lower than we were during the last 6 months, but that's still up quite a bit. So our solvability factor, our clearance rate has gone up, which is great because, you know, it goes towards the fulfilling justice for the victims' families when those crimes happen. And that's an important component that we want to put an emphasis on for the folks that live in our community. Next slide, please. So our Special Enforcement Bureau is one of those new units that SIU, Vice, Narcotics, they're out there doing a lot of specialized enforcement. During the first 6 months, they arrested 124 people for felonies, 148 for misdemeanors, and then 6 victim rescues. That Vice unit's out there, they're working very hard. You might have seen a press release recently that went out that identified 11 individuals that were out victimizing women on our streets that were being human trafficked. That's something that we'll continue to do. But we're making a lot of arrests. And the victim rescues are a lot of those, and some people may look at it and say, well, they're just out there doing whatever, but 6 of those were juveniles. 6 juvenile female victims out there being human trafficked, and they were rescued off the streets of San Bernardino. So I think that's an important thing to point out, that our team is out there doing a really good job. And that's a Vice team we haven't had out there for a number of years. So it's sorely needed. I think you can notice a difference in that area downtown on 5th Street and just going up off of G and H, which was an area that was in the last several years have been heavily affected by that human trafficking element. So they've been doing a great job. Next slide. So these are the current district commanders. It's a little bit in flux. Again, that's just a reminder of our district command structure in those districts areas, the map. Our district downtown is a bit smaller, but we wanted to kind of focus in on a lot of area downtown because I know it's ripe for redevelopment. We want to see that area change and get developed and see that core downtown come back. So the only real change here is that Lieutenant Nelson Carrington is now the Western District Commander. Something about Nelson is that he grew up in that area. He went to school in that area, high school, graduated. He's a local product of our community, and he's over there serving the community where he grew up. So it's a great addition to our policing district command structure. Next slide is the crime per district. I know that's something that people want to look at a little bit. Now keep in mind that our boundaries aren't going to change necessarily for our districts, but what we do is that depending on crime trends and patterns in those districts, we will assign additional officers to an area to make a change if crime goes up in a particular area. So as you can see that the crime numbers aren't necessarily the same in every area, but that doesn't mean that the staffing is the same. Staffing could be adjusted depending on what's going on in that particular area.
On this slide, which one is Southern? You have 2 Eastern.
Yeah, you have 2 Easterns.
Oh.
I was going to point that out. Sorry.
Let's see. I think the
bottom one
on the bottom is going to be the Southern District.
Yeah, go back to that that last slide.
Yeah, that's the Southern District. The bottom one is the Southern District.
Okay. Thank you.
Righty. And then I know there was a question about online reporting. So we've always had online reporting. And so what we wanted to show you is we really started to put the heavy emphasis when the coronavirus hit on online reporting. for crimes that didn't have a named suspect, that maybe burglaries, where people come home and find something burglarized, or a theft, vandalism. And so you can see where that effect was affected on our online reporting. So you'll see that the numbers, and ending in June, when the numbers have nearly tripled or quadrupled, from 373 online reports in June of 2019 to 1,158 online reports in June of 2020. And all those come into our system, they're reviewed, they're looked at, they're approved, and then they're put into the overall crime numbers until where they fit as far as what type of crime they are. So they are counted. As you can see, there has been a big increase in those online reports. And I think that when we develop that mobile app, which the coronavirus emergency supplemental funding is going to pay for, that you'll see that it'll be easier to make an online report. And I think that you'll find that people are starting to move to make online reports. And that's the thing of the future, is making online reports.
Chief, I have a question about this,
Sure.
this table you got. The districts, were they chosen with equal populations?
No, not necessarily. It's not like a congressional district, for example, that's
Yeah.
by population. A lot of it has to do with natural boundaries. And
Uh-huh.
so, if you look at that, like the western and the northern district, they're divided by the 215 freeway.
Yeah.
And then, and even the central district. And then you look for the main thoroughfares, and that's really has the kind of like the deciding line of where those things. So they're kind of a natural. We want to make it sure that people kind of understand where they live too by, just telling them, hey, if you live north of Baseline, for example, you're in this district, and you live west or east of the 215, for example.
If you go back to that table, I would know the northern eastern district, the totals are tremendously quite a bit higher than in the other districts. 1,100, 1,275 as compared to 820 and 410 and so forth.
Right. And as mentioned,
obviously the central district there's not as many people living there.
Right. But because of that, as I mentioned earlier, the distribution of the officers to those areas are not equal. So if it's a higher ratio of calls for service, then we're assigning additional officers to that area to kind of combat that higher response or a higher crime or need for reports and stuff like that. So we balance it out that way.
Great.
Yes, Councilman.
Another question I have, is it possible that we rearrange the districts then, being that only the northern and eastern have disproportionately higher numbers? I'm guessing most of them are in the second ward, but I'm just taking a guess there.
How we make that adjustment is we assign additional officers.
Okay.
For that area. And that's what you would get if you made the district, if you moved the boundaries. If they're all equal, then they'd have equal number of officers. But how we offset that is we assign additional officers to an area where we see it. Because those numbers are always in flux. You may see a flare-up of burglaries in one area for a period of time. And it may be because there's this a crew of people that are working burglaries in that particular area, and then we may get onto them and they move on to another area. So we have to keep monitoring that. And one way to do that is we can affect, as we get officers off training, we can assign additional officers to another area because we see a crime spike. Next slide, please. So this is the activities of our districts out there. Despite COVID-19, they've been out there quite a bit still. Homeless contacts, citizen contacts are up. Encampment removals for the transients out there, and those are still taking place. So, and I want to thank Burtec and of course our Public Works, who they partner with us on those cleanups. They do a lion's share of that cleanup. A lot of our officers are out there just providing the security to make sure that you don't have any issues out there. But those encampment removals take place all the time, and they take place in every district in the city. I think that's important that people realize that once a week. Every district has Burtec, and they have Public Works out there with our officers cleaning up, in response to CRMs or what the officers see out there that's taking place. Those officers work in the district commands, and these are those 2 officers in each district that are assigned, plus a sergeant. They made 357 felony arrests. They made 2,327 misdemeanor arrests. They impounded 676 vehicles, and they did 51 community events. Next slide, please. Now, this is the call for service, and we did it from the last 6 months of 2019 to the first 6 months of this year. And the calls of service are down. Of quite a bit. I think that's a lot to do with what's going on. When you think about, that we get a lot of theft reports, for example, and retail theft at the mall and big businesses and stuff like that. Of course, with businesses closed, you're not seeing retail thefts, you're not seeing those types of crimes taking place. And so you see, and then people are at home. So you see a reduction in burglaries because people are at home because they're not working. So crime has shifted to some areas versus others, but we have seen an overall reduction in the calls for service. But one thing that we did, of course, is because also we're responding to less calls and we're requesting that people make reports online. This has allowed us to shift our focus into those calls in progress. And so there's one thing about responding to a call that's happened, and it may have happened 5 hours ago, but there's another thing about responding to a call that's taking place right now. And what you look at right now is our overall response time has gone down significantly by 36%. But those priority e-calls, we're already getting there pretty quick, but we were able to cut off 1.26 minutes or almost 15%. Our priority 1 calls by almost 6 minutes. But priority 2 calls, we've been able to cut off over an hour in our response time. And that's because we're now responding to those highest priority calls because we have more officers available to do that because we're not responding to those lowest priority calls. We're requesting that folks make those lowest priority calls online. Because what happens is an officer goes out to a burglary and takes that. They might be out there for 40, 50 minutes. They're not available to respond to one of these higher priority calls. But because we've asked people to make those reports online, it has allowed us to, without adding additional officers, to respond to these priority calls much, much quicker. And that's the difference between saving someone's life, preventing a serious injury, or getting a suspect in custody. And that's really something important to think about. Next slide, please. And so these are the arrest summaries. As you can tell, our felony arrests were up over this last 6 months, over the previous 6 months by 29, kind of an insignificant number. Misdemeanor arrests were down, but that may have to do with the fact that we're not arresting as many people that, for citizens arrests and stuff, at retail thefts and stuff like that. So those numbers are down, but the number of cited individuals has gone up significantly. And that has a lot to do, I believe, with the fact that the jail simply isn't taking a lot of prisoners because of COVID-19. And so one thing that, I was told recently by the sheriff that the state prison system is not accepting state commitments because of COVID-19. So at the time, and this was last month when I talked to him, he said that they were holding, I think the number was roughly around 500 to 600 prisoners that should be in state prison at the local jail. And so when he has to hold those people, and these could be murderers, they could be other serious crimes, he has to hold them there until the state's willing to accept them. But he also has to create space in his jail to hold those folks. And that means people with lesser offenses have to be let out. People that typically would maybe get booked in and stay in jail for a while and now being released. Keep in mind also, and that number has ticked up since they first went out, the state of California has stated that they're going to release, I think, nearly 15,000 prisoners early in the state of California. And that's going to contribute to crime. I can tell you right now that I undoubtedly think that everybody's crime numbers against the state of California are going to go up. And that's simply because the state is releasing people early, a lot of people early. So next slide, please. And so these are the numbers from the last 6 months over the previous 6 months. Homicides were down by 1, rape is up, but that's also because our vice team is out there contacting these victims of human trafficking, and we're able to make a lot more reports than we normally would in that element because we have a team that's out there working that full time. Robbery is down, aggravated assaults are down, burglaries are down, thefts are down, vehicle thefts are down, and human trafficking's down a little bit. But overall, the one thing that we have seen across the state and the country, it's not reflected in these numbers, but I think it's ours in the last month, and that's since June 30th, have started to trend up a little bit in aggravated assaults. And that's something that I saw that 50 of the largest cities in the country, and we're number 100 on that list of biggest cities in the country, have all shown a significant increase in aggravated assaults. So I think that the fact that people are just being cooped up for so long is starting to contribute to a little bit higher crime in that element. You might be seeing thefts go down because retail stores are closed, but you're starting to see now aggravated assaults go up in the last couple of months. Not the first several months of the coronavirus, but now just most recently. Next slide, please. And these are just the month over month numbers, and then they're reflected against the first 6 months of 2019. And you can see that still those numbers are, down in some cases and maybe up a little bit in some others. But overall, I think that the overall crime index this 6 months over the previous 6 months is down almost 15%. Property crime is down 20%. Violent crime on this statistic, and this is a different 6 months that we're compared against over the previous slide, is up 2%. And that, it's starting to trend up a little bit, as I mentioned, over the last couple months. So next slide, please. Operations, our traffic unit, as you know, that's a team that's out there. They do not only traffic enforcement, but they do investigations. They handle all the tow impounds and releases and stuff like that. And they also do a lot of traffic safety stuff like DUI checkpoints, safety checkpoints, and that's all grant funded. We get a lot of grant money for that stuff. So from our generated revenue from impound releases, so 228,000, franchise fees from the tow companies, 299,000, 408,000 from parking citations, private property impounds, the city collected nearly 60,000, and from vehicle code fines, 465,000 for the first 6 months. And then our traffic unit conducted 3 DUI checkpoints, 11 DUI saturation check patrols, 6 traffic enforcement, 1 distracted driving, which is someone who's texting or talking on the phone, 3 motorcycle safety programs, 13 pedestrian enforcement programs, and then 2 different collaborative type enforcements with different agencies. As you all know, we do have a major issue with traffic fatalities, and so all these are out there trying to combat that traffic fatality, especially pedestrian enforcement. As you can see, there was a heavy emphasis on pedestrian enforcement. We have a lot of pedestrians when they're hit by cars and killed on the street. It's generally because they're jaywalking. They're jaywalking at night. People can't see them, or it could be because that person didn't see them because they're driving distracted or they're driving under the influence. That being said, I don't see it on the slide, but I think that we had made, I think the number was around 600 DUI arrests this year in the first 6 months. So we're actually out there doing quite a bit for trying to try to combat that traffic fatality rate. And I think we had just a little over 20 traffic fatalities the first 6 months of the year. So it kind of equals our homicide rate. Next slide, please. So our K9 team, I don't know if you follow us on Twitter or social media, but they've been pretty proactive out there. And we have our first bomb dog, but we also have our dogs that can sniff out money that's been used in drug trafficking and stuff. And then we just had some significant seizures that we posted out there on social media. But so far this year, the K9 program, which is always popular with the community, they did 19 community events, 13 public demonstrations. During patrol and assisting officers in the field, they made 24 suspect finds. They recovered 5 firearms. And then our unit consists of 4 dogs currently. 3 are narcotics detection and also work to apprehend suspects. And then one is our first one is trained not only for apprehend suspects, but also for explosives detection. So that's something we wanted to augment in the department. And they're all cross-trained in different things as well. But the K9 team does a great job out there on patrol force. And that's the presentation. Go next slide. I can answer any questions if anybody has any.
Thank you very much, Chief McBride. We appreciate the presentation. We'll open up to council members. Councilman Nicol.
Yeah, thank you, Chief, for the presentation. I had a couple of quick questions for you. First off, on the homeless front, what were the numbers we had on homeless interactions? We had that slide up. Now, is it really, if there's any homeless encampment or individual camped on a property, the police are the appropriate responding entity, right? More or less to deal with that?
The simple fact of someone being homeless is not a crime.
I understand.
However, that being said, they can encroach on other properties and stuff like that, illegal camping and such, and when it's inappropriate. So we can arrest somebody for camping in a public park if there's.
Now, how about on private property? If they're on private property,
we can. There's code sections for private property. We would have to get authorization from the property owner that we can arrest somebody for trespassing on their property. So it's just us. If we see a problem, generally what happens is if we have a vacant lot, for example, we start to see a habitual problem where there's transients. those district resource officers will reach out to the property owner, contact them and say, hey, because a lot of them are absentee landlords or absentee property owners, and they may not be aware of the problem. And we'll let them know, hey, you've got a problem with transients. Are you willing to sign an authorization letter for us that when we make notification of somebody that they're trespassing, that we have your permission to arrest them if they're there? And in most cases, they'll sign that and we'll be able to write them a ticket.
And then where do they go? Where do those homeless individuals go?
They're issued a citation. They don't go to jail. As I mentioned earlier, there's no bed space for transients in jail. In the past, that was we could take transients for various crimes to jail and they could go there. So they go and, it's kind of like they go from place to place. We do provide them resources. We let them know where there is bed
So
space.
when you pick them up and transport them, where are you transporting them to?
The only time that they would get transported somewhere is if they don't have identification or we cannot identify them. So we're going to have to identify them to issue a ticket. So they would go to jail. They would be fingerprinted so that we could identify them positively, and then the jail will release them because they're not held for that crime in the jail.
And one last question. Do we have good interaction with our shelters here? I know that HEAP funding went to a number of organizations in the city to address the homeless challenge. And I'm curious on whether or not those monies are going to actually assist with the challenge we're confronting in terms of the overwhelming number of homeless we have in our city.
I don't know where the money goes. I know that we are in contact with shelters in our area. We'll even give them a ride if they want to go and there's bed space. We also, if someone says, hey, I got off the bus here, I don't have any money, I live in Salt Lake City, and I just need to get a bus ticket home, we'll provide, there's resources out there where we can get them a bus ticket home. And so our encouragement is to get people off the street into housing, but that's, we can't force them into housing.
Yeah, because I've got a perennial problem in my ward. We've got a individual that keeps coming back and coming back and coming back.
Councilmember, I would also suggest that we can reach out to our housing division. We have HUD funding available. We have contractors that will go out and assist with this, step 1 second. So we do contract with a number of individuals through our.
And I think based on the number of complaints I've been receiving, I think it might be a good idea at some point to call in some of those providers and maybe in a workshop setting or a hearing or something, really get to understand what they're doing right now and whether or not they're really capable of helping us with this challenge. Because I'm seeing people coming back. We spend a lot of money clearing them out, cleaning up these encampments, and then they come right back again.
I'll say in defense of the service providers, we do work with them and they do assist us in placing individuals. The problem is getting the individual to stay there or to accept it in the first place.
All right, Councilman, thank you. Councilman Mulvihill, sir, go ahead.
Yeah, Henry, just to help answer your question, the Supreme Court just approved a lower court judgment, the Miller-Boise decision. If we don't have space for them, they can sleep in a public place, and there's nothing we can do about it. But it's got to be public space. Could be a sidewalk, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we've got 830 unsheltered homeless as of last January. And of course, there's probably more than that because I'm sure we missed some of them. So, and that's a third of the county's unsheltered population. And the other point I wanted to make, Chief, is this PowerPoint available?
Genevieve, I thought we sent it out earlier, and I apologize, but she did just send it out right before we got started.
Oh, okay, so it is, okay, so I'll take a look for it there. Thank you.
Okay, council members, thank you. If there's no more comments, we do appreciate our police department.
I'll make a comment real quick.
Councilman Figueroa, sir, go ahead.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you so much. And you mentioned Lieutenant Carrington earlier regarding the Western District, and I just want to say he's been doing a great job so far. I think it's been a little over a month or so, and he's really rolled up his sleeves and done great work in that area, and also great job with the railroad security and ABC grant as well. I hope to keep the lieutenant very busy with those two grants, particularly in the Rancho West neighborhood area, where there are a lot of issues regarding ABC, liquor stores and other issues like that, and the railroads on the western side as well. I know that the majority of the railroads do run through the 1st, 3rd, and some of the 6th ward as well. So we'll hopefully keep him pretty busy with some of those grants.
Great.
Very good. Councilman, also I wanted to inform Councilman Figueroa, Mayor Pro Tem Sanchez, and any other member who would like to join me. I have an upcoming conference call on that security grant for railroading with the industry. So very good resources to pollinate with them and seek additional funding mechanism and piggyback any grants that we can for our police department on those enforcement for pedestrians and safety of our railways. I do want to highlight the presentation. I'm very grateful for the $6.72 million in the last 6 months that the city of San Bernardino through the police department has been approved on grants. The $5.3 million COPS grant is a hiring grant that will enable us to hire 13 officers, and that is because of our adoption of the community-oriented policing. I'm very grateful for the federal government and allowing us those monies, and this is just another expression of what good looks like, and we're excited about these results. We'll continue to support it, and this is really going to impact, I believe, crime in our community. So we're grateful for our police department. Thank you for our patrolmen, our supervisors, lieutenants, dispatchers. We thank you very much for all that you do to continue your efforts to protect our businesses and residential corridors. Thank you. Thank you, Chief. At this time, we will have a moment of silence. This has been requested as a moment of silence, please, for Mr. Victor Fenster, who passed away July 25th of 2020. Mr. Fenster passed away at the age of 94. He was born in Brooklyn, New York, and was the youngest of 6 children. Victor enlisted in the U.S. Army in April 1944. He was awarded the Bronze Star Medal for bravery during a war battle in Germany on April 8th, 1945. In 1957, he moved to California with his family, where he opened up his own CPA firm in San Bernardino. In later years, both of his sons, both Gary and John, joined the family firm of Fenster and Fenster CPAs. The firm continues to this day. Victor is survived by his 3 children, Jean Korngold, Gary Fenster, John Fenster, and 5 grandchildren. As Mr. Fenster would always say, be strong, it's your America. And I ask that the council, please, if we would recognize a moment of silence. Thank you very much, council. At this time, we'll enter our public comments portion of tonight. Ms. City Clerk, would you please read any public comments that were submitted in advance?
You want me to read the entirety of the written comments?
If there's any, well, how about this? Why don't we roll the tape on the public comments? And then I guess this was more intended for council members if they have any public comments that they'd like to issue. So let's roll the tape on the public comments, please.
Okay.
Approximately how many do we have tonight?
We have, I believe it's 6 recorded comments. And Mitch, can you please give me authorization to share my screen, please?
You're good?
Thank you.
My name is Reverend Stephen Shepard, St. Paul AME Church, 1355 West 21st Street, San Bernardino, California. Mr. Mayor and honorable council persons, I know you have a lot on your mind, such as lawsuits as a result of the mayor's inappropriate behavior, the raising of taxes on the back of the poor, hiring more police officers, replacing the city manager, hiring a police chief, and other critical issues. They're all important, but I want you to keep on your mind that for the past 114 plus years, this city has never had an African American as police chief. I think this is a disservice to our city and the people of color who reside in the city, and is evident of blatant and outright systematic racism in the city. Mayor, I read on your webpage that you're going to root out racism and discrimination. There's no better time to start than now with the police chief and city manager position. The late great civil rights leader and Congressman John Lewis once said to us, if we see something wrong, say something. If you see something wrong, do something. If you see something wrong, then get in the way. It's past time that we stir up good trouble, as Congressman Lewis would have called it. Mr. Mayor, I see something wrong in City Hall, and I'm saying something. I will do something in and get in your way by asking the members of St. Paul and voters in San Bernardino to oppose giving the city any more Measure Z tax money and to voice that conviction at the ballot box come November the 3rd. Mr. Mayor, I join the chorus of Councilman Charrette's comments. You have shown us not only by your actions and lack thereof that you have not been a good steward over that which has been placed in your hands. I leave you with the Spanish proverb that says, a wise man changes his mind, a fool never will. Thank you for your time.
Yes, good evening. My name is Manny Acosta from Pepe's Towing. This is on a significant exposure to litigation subject. And this message is for the city manager, the mayor, the city council, and the people of San Bernardino. As you all know, I am suing the city because they improperly excluded me from the towing contract because I wouldn't pay to play with Mayor Valdivia. As a result, the city has spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in this lawsuit to protect someone whom you now know is corrupt and takes bribes, Mayor Valdivia. While the city keeps and continues spending needed money, it now became complicit in violating the Clean Water Act by allowing unqualified towers to pollute the sites where they are located and allowing the mayor to hide behind the COVID pandemic to prevent the public from confronting him at public meetings, which other cities are allowing. All we want is to be able to fairly participate in the city contract without having to pay bribes and without being forced to face unrequired burdens under the contracts that other towers are allowed to disregard. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Christopher Gonzalez. This is for the open session meeting. I live in the 2nd Ward of the city of San Bernardino for the last 17 years. I am a student and a future voter. I am taking action in regards to the federal COVID funding San Bernardino City has received from the CARES Act and Emergency Solutions Grant to address the pandemic in our city and prevent further economic and public health impairment in our community. We ask that you extend the eviction moratorium to protect our families from becoming homeless during this time. We ask that you ensure that process for rental relief and eviction prevention is fair, equitable, and efficient for immigrant families in our community who have been excluded from prior relief funding and are in desperate need of support. We ask for rental assistance for at least $1,295 per family for 3 months' rent. It is our hope that you will go further to protect our families in need as we learn to navigate this pandemic in a effective and equitable manner. I am a future voter, and along with my friends, family, and neighbors, we are paying attention to the way in which these funds will be allocated to help those in need. Thank you for taking the time to listen to your community.
My name is Tristan Pelaez from the law offices of Pelaez and You. I'm calling regarding the items of significant exposure to the city regarding litigation. It is for open session. We represent Manny Acosta and his company named Pepe's Towing. We also represent several former employees of the city and Mayor Valdivia who have suffered hostile work environments and sexual harassment at the hands of the mayor. My question is, why is the city still protecting the mayor when everyone knows he improperly excluded Pepe's Towing from a city contract because Pepe's Towing would not contribute to Mayor Valdivia? Also, why does the city still protect Mayor Valdivia when everyone has been on notice of his sexual harassment and hostile work environment against his closest employees? Unfortunately, when two sides get entrenched in their position, the city will lose hundreds of thousands of dollars protecting a predator they know is the cause of most of the city's current problems, instead of resolving these many lawsuits. and putting an end to it. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Merv Simkovitz, managing member of Pure Dispensaries LLC. This is the issue with the cannabis ordinance first reading tonight in front of the City Council. This is to the City Council. You have the first reading of the proposed adjustment to the cannabis ordinance before you tonight. All 5 successful retail cannabis applicants that were legally approved by the rigorous, expensive, and time-consuming conditions, rules, and regulations set up by this very City Council, together with the assistance of the outside third-party adjudicating firm HDL, are now being unfairly undermined. This sudden illegal alteration to magically expand the number of retail licenses to 17 in the city is unethical and makes a joke of your process. This appears as an easy way for the city to resolve and satisfy the baseless lawsuits from disgruntled applicants that did not make the final top 5 list. The message this conveys to the world is that all you have to do to get what you want from the city of San Bernardino is to sue them, and they will buckle. Not only is this both illegal and unethical to change the rules after we have already complied downstream, but also makes the city vulnerable to future lawsuits from the original successful applicants. 17 retail locations in a city of this size is oversaturating that devastates the cannabis retailers in cities like Santa Ana, Moreno Valley, etc., where they allowed too many retail licenses, and now they are dealing with bankruptcies, vacant stores, blighted areas, and increased unemployment resulting from the minimum tax flowing to the city. This encourages the illegal, virulent cannabis black market, who provide untested, adulterated, and impure product to be digested by the city's citizens. This illegal operator have an advantage by not having to adhere to the stringent laws from the State Bureau of Cannabis Control or the City of San Bernardino, and do not have to pay the approximate 47% tax to the state, county, and cities on products sold. If the concern is that because it takes about a year to complete the requirements and construction of the improvements, security, etc., required to get a cannabis business license to start operating and the city receiving taxes, then place some deadline for a penalty of loss on the retail licenses if any of the 5 approved existing licenses do not perform and open timely, and replace them with the next applicant in line from the HDL Phase 3 result list. It takes about a year to complete the requirements necessary to obtain a legal business license, plus the time, effort, and expense.
Okay, that public speaker reached his 3-minute limit. However, he did also submit a written public comment, which was already provided to you in the email sent earlier this evening.
Yes, my name is Frank. Last name is Aldi, and I have an ongoing trouble. I live in South City, south of the city at Colston. I have an ongoing problem with towing my vehicles, and every time I call, the police dismiss my call as it's private tow and go to the court. The police saying that the court is looked down. You go to court and pay $2. No, the court is not. You go to court, you have to pay $10,000. So last time I spoke to Mr. Acosta, he said he's a detective, and the detective just asked me a couple of questions and go ask the other side a couple of questions, and then he said go to court. So I don't know the difference between the detective and the police. Okay, I've been without any help from the city or from the police for almost more than a year now. Okay, I wish the city council would take care of that. Thank you.
And that concludes the recorded public comments.
Thank you very much. Ms. Ibarra.
Yes, I have a public comment from one of my constituents. She asked that I read it out loud. So, Mayor and City Council, I am Lynn Ware, a lifelong and concerned resident of San Bernardino. I'm a community advocate actively involved in neighborhood associations, working with city officials and residents towards improved quality of life for everyone. While we all understand the importance of making a living and taking care of our families, we live in a country of laws. Those laws should be enforced and applied fairly and equitably to all. So it is not acceptable to allow a certain group of community members to completely disregard a city ordinance without consequences. In this case, the street vendor ordinance. It appears as though street vendors in San Bernardino are not monitored or inspected at all. They draw customers away from legitimate brick and mortar establishments who are licensed and inspected regularly and pay taxes. In addition, from a public safety standpoint, these street vendors set up in locations where their customers are stopping or parking unsafely, jeopardizing vehicle and pedestrian safety. This is not acceptable. It is unfair to ask law-abiding, community-minded groups to obtain and pay for a permit to have a meeting or an activity in a park or to have a block party, while simultaneously turning a blind eye to the street vendors who break the law every day. There is a taco festival set up every night at Muscopiabi and Highland, featuring half a dozen street taco and beverage vendors, complete with lights and easy-up canopies. Something must be done about this inequity. Please make a determination as to who in our city government will be responsible for monitoring these street vendors and enforcing the law. I know I speak for many other community members as well as for myself. You were elected to uphold the law and protect our rights. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. At this time, let's go ahead and move on to item number 3, staff reports. This is the League of California Cities Annual Conference Delegate and Alternates. At this time, I will open the nomination period for a selection of a delegate and up to 2 alternates. This is a virtual conference. Any recommendations? I'd like to.
Mulvihill, I'll nominate you.
Okay, great. Is there a
Accept the
second?
nomination?
Is there? Yep. Is there a second to Councilman Mulvihill as a delegate for the League of California City Conference, October 7th through 9th?
I'll second.
All right, very good.
If Mr. Mulvihill is willing to accept.
Yes, I accept your recognition, and I'm very proud of it.
All right. All right.
Okay, very good. All right, and then we need up to 2 alternates. Any other alternates, recommendations, motion?
I recommend Sandra Ibarra.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
All right, and one more alternate, please.
I'll nominate Councilmember Charette.
And I'll second that.
Okay, very good.
Councilmember Charette will accept.
He's not saying no.
All right.
All right.
All right. All
Has he
right.
fallen asleep?
Okay, let's.
I'm paying very close attention to everything. Don't.
Okay, good. Let's call for the question on that. If there's no objections, Madam City Clerk, if you'd register the record no objections with those choices selected by the City Council. Thank you. Moving on to item number 4. At this time, I will turn it over to Mayor Pro Tem as I have a conflict. Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem, if you please proceed.
Oh, okay. Yes. Any declarations before leaving? All right. Let's go ahead and move on to item number 4. Staff, can you please read the report?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I'm going to turn it over to our Community and Economic Development. Stephanie, will you be giving this presentation? Oh, okay. And Mike Huntley.
Yeah. I spoke with Mike earlier today, Terry, and they've designated me to help out this evening.
Great.
So
Thank you,
I will present this item. Council members, this is the first reading of an ordinance which would increase the number of cannabis business permits and the adoption of a resolution concerning types of cannabis business permits. It also pertains to the trade-in of certain permits for micro businesses for those businesses that are operating as of August 31st of this year. And it will also provide direction concerning guideline amendments for permit processing deadlines causing forfeiture in the future. I just wanted to remind the council with a little bit of background that you may recall that at the June 17th, 2020 council meeting, staff provided you with a comprehensive update on the status of all cannabis business applications and how the voter-approved ordinance was being implemented. This report was mandated by Chapter 5.10 of the San Bernardino Municipal Code. This is the ordinance that was adopted by the people. At that June 17th meeting, the City Council had expressed some concerns that of the 16 businesses that had been selected to proceed with the approval process, only 2 were actually open and functioning at that time. Stating its goal to implement the voter-approved ordinance and also to generate revenue, the council asked staff to do all of the following. You wanted us to propose deadlines by which applicants would have to take action and show their progress towards securing their permits or forfeit the opportunity so that others could move forward in the process. You also asked us to prepare the necessary ordinance and resolution that would increase the maximum number of commercial cannabis permits that can be awarded, that would permit up to a maximum of 17 retail/micro business permits, to allow for an unlimited number of permits in the other business categories, and to provide that any cannabis operation that was fully operating by August 31st would have the opportunity to transition to micro business. So the proposed resolution and ordinance before you this evening will accomplish those goals. But before we move on, I would like to make some clarifications and make some things clear. First, the maximum number of 17 retail and micro business permits pertain only to those micro businesses which include a retail component. If a micro business does not contain the retail component, they're going to be treated as one of those quote other close quote businesses for which there will be no cap. This will be clarified in the forthcoming amended guidelines. Second, as for the transition from a micro business process, we will have to be mindful of the state regulations, and we will provide flexibility for a seamless and continuous transition. The businesses will have to comply with state law, and I want to ensure those applicants that we will work with them to make sure that their permits are not put in jeopardy if they choose to go through the transition process. These will be considered a trade-in. We are not offering the existing businesses an additional permit, so we will work with them. To ensure that you receive objective information, I also just wanted to point out one thing. There are applicants who have contacted staff and who have made public comments who have said that they acted quickly to secure their permits and that they invested in their businesses with the understanding that there would be limited retail operations in the city. Some have already submitted comments and have commented that these changes to the policy, which would allow up to 17 retail type licenses, unfairly impact them, that they've made significant investments, one said up to $3 million, with certain investment-backed expectations that the number of retail operations would be limited based on the market conditions that you created in the original application. Finally, the council will still need to adopt another resolution adopting amended guidelines. These guidelines will implement the ordinance and resolution that you have before you tonight. And while some of you and many members of the public have expressed impatience about getting these guidelines, I just want to stress how important they are. They're essential to us being able to operate in the future and to avoid the type of litigation that we experienced in the first rounds. So these amended guidelines will contain an application bond or a guarantee that the council has requested. The bond or guarantee will ensure that any future applicants are qualified, serious, and committed to obtaining their permit without delay. The guidelines will also address the process for relocations, potential expansions into adjacent spaces, and due process for anyone who may be in danger of forfeiting their permit due to lack of moving forward in the process. I understand that some in the community have also mentioned that these changes will allow for consumption lounges or new regulations that would allow for gathering where you can both smoke and drink alcohol on premises. I want to make it absolutely clear. We have received no direction from the council, nor has there been any consideration of any such type of regulations. The direction given to staff to date does not include such operations. And furthermore, under state law, the cannabis business cannot both provide alcohol and cannabis at the same time. Finally, if you have any questions about the status of applications or those who are operating, staff is available tonight. I'd like to also publicly thank both Stephanie and Elizabeth for their assistance and patience They are the ones who receive the numerous questions every single day. They receive the complaints, and they have been maneuvering through this process. I'm really grateful for their help and also their insights. We want to be able to work together, and with your direction, we want to prepare for you final procedures that are objective, easy to implement, and fair to everyone who's involved in our process. So staff is recommending that you adopt the resolution before you and that you conduct a first reading of the ordinance. That's all I have.
Fred?
Thank you. First of all, I want to ask my colleagues that we split the two votes. The item number, or item, 4.1 or 4A and 4.2, so that those two items, accepting the first reading, and then item number 2, adopt resolution 2020-190 concerning types of cannabis businesses allowing trade be separated into 2 separate votes. First of all, I'll make that motion and hope I can get a second to separate those 2.
Second.
So I would call for the question on that particular item.
Any other comments?
Well, I've got other comments, yeah, and I guess it doesn't matter if
all right, let's do the city clerk. If you could do a roll call on splitting the items on 4.
Yes. Councilmember Sanchez,
Yes.
Councilmember Ibarra,
Yes.
Councilmember Figueroa,
Yes, that's fine.
Councilmember Charette,
yes.
Councilmember Nickel,
Yes.
Councilmember Richard,
Yes.
and Councilmember Mulvihill.
Yes.
The motion to separate the votes on each of the recommendations passes 7-0.
All right, thank you. Thank you to my colleagues. And I too want to really express my sincere gratitude to the Community Development Department, particularly Stephanie and Elizabeth, who have been through this grueling process that we're all new to and that were very difficult. And all I've heard about all of you, the entire staff, Mike and your entire staff, Elizabeth and Stephanie, has been nothing but A+, that you've worked very hard to do this. You've been very professional, very competent, very capable, very complete. You've done absolutely the best you possibly could under some, I think, very extreme conditions. But having said all that, I continue to believe that we had a process and we should have stuck with it, and believe that changing the rules in the middle of the road, and I think largely to avoid litigation, I think was absolutely wrong. I've talked to others in other communities that the revenues that were supposedly the panacea and fixing all the ills of the financial concerns of California cities is just not nearly what it's cracked up to be. And unless we crack down, as we tried to maybe it's been now as many as a year ago, but a number of months ago, certainly. And I recall Henry, but going off in closed session saying enough is enough. We want the black market closed down. We want them gone. We did that for a while, and I think we were showing some success with that. But until we do that, it is absolutely unfair to expect the current applicants that went through the process and spent lots of money on their proposals to be chosen, and then on tenant improvements and other issues to get up and operating. I think it's absolutely a slap in their face, and certainly opens us up to other types of litigation if we change the rules in the middle of the road. And I think we've done that with this accepting the 17 retail operations, including both retail and the what's it called, the micro businesses. So I do not support that portion. I will support giving a bonus, if you will, or a benefit to those that did perform and got opened. And I just think that we should have allowed the process to go through as originally planned and voted on and worked hard, and with all the people that understood they were applying for one situation, and now we're saying, oh, by the way, instead of maybe 10.
How long has he been talking?
10 competitors, you're going to have 17. And I think it's hard enough in business today to compete with anybody. And though I'm a big supporter of the free market, this is a new market and a market that no one really understands completely. And I think we've got evidence of other cities that the tax revenues or the revenues were not what they were cracked up to be. And so I will not be supporting the expansion of the number of licenses, and I will be supporting giving a benefit to those that did qualify and worked hard to get open by the 31st of August.
All right, Henry, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I don't know if you can do one without another. If we convert those retails to micros, then we bump up against the limits, the 5 micro limit of the original ordinance, correct, Sonia?
Yes. Because everyone isn't open. There's only going to be 2 or 3 that are going to benefit from that. That's a benefit.
But the problem is, Fred, the old ordinance determines the number of license types we issue, which means we won't be able to issue additional micros.
Not true.
If you were to take that approach, we could end up in a situation where we'd have to come back to council and slightly
We'd have to change it anyway.
So that would be something we would have to do if we decided to do that. We do have some micro business applicants that are not very far along in the process, and there's always the chance that they don't complete. But I would imagine that we probably would have to come to you and adjust those numbers. Remember one thing, your ordinance is establishing the number of permits. It's by resolution that you establish the business categories.
Right, and I haven't heard any complaints about the other categories. I've only heard complaints about retail. And that also concerns me, that if we stick with the old ordinance, we may be undercutting ourselves in those other categories. So I don't support just doing nothing. I think that's completely irresponsible given the circumstances we confront. Now, I do want to make it clear that 17 is a cap. It doesn't mean we have to issue 17. And I would recommend, in the context of the guidelines that come forward, that we address the need to ensure that we have a stable market, sustainable market, and that we don't oversaturate. But I think it's very clear that, since we have one retailer right now in the city, one, that clearly there's a problem. And I think by creating an upper cap that says, look, this is the maximum we're going to issue, I think what it does is it gives us flexibility from a policy perspective, that as time goes by, and I completely agree with my colleague, Mr. Charette, that we're still trying to figure this out. Everybody's trying to figure this out. But I think we do ourselves a great disservice by boxing ourselves in to constraints that were established when we had even less information. And I think given what we know now about the marketplace, the industry, how it's evolving, I think having that flexibility by increasing that cap and otherwise placing no caps on those other categories from which I've heard no complaints about oversaturation at all, I think is the proper thing to do. I would also like to just ask that we include language in the actual ordinance. I'm looking at page 23, and I know our legal counsel made it clear that the cap would apply only to retail or micro businesses with a retail component. Unfortunately, that retail component language is not included in the actual ordinance language. What I would like to recommend is that we add language, couple or 5 words at the end of the sentence. I'm looking at page 23, section 3, subsection C of the ordinance, where it talks about a total of 17 retail and micro businesses. I would add a comma that include a retail component. So it's absolutely clear in the ordinance that if you're a micro business that does not have a retail component, you are not subject to that 17 cap. Like I say, I have heard no complaints. The only complaints I have heard are from the existing retail applicants, which I completely understand and I completely agree with. We don't want to oversaturate that market. But at the same time, we don't want to end up with a situation where we don't have an optimal number of retailers as well, because we stick with the old system that clearly is not working. So my recommendation, my motion would be that we approve the first component of this discussion tonight, approve the ordinance with that language, and include in the guidelines some very direct language that ensures that this is simply a cap. That doesn't mean we're going to issue 17 licenses, but that staff will, there will be a process to ensure that we have an optimal market, we do not oversaturate, and that the issuance of those 17 licenses will be discretionary based on that assessment.
Jim, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure, Henry, what you just said.
I know what he said.
Yeah, let me explain. We shouldn't make any decision without being backed by solid data. And you say it's not working. It's not, we haven't allowed it to work yet. The reason why we limited it to 6 was to try them out, to experiment whether in fact 6 could be successful. We don't know that yet. I think what we just had one outlet, retail outlet, that's been open for this whole time. I guess we got a second one that's operating, but that hasn't operated for more than just a couple of months. And so what I'm saying is that we need to have the data. We don't know what the demand is. And if we're saying that we're going to put a cap at 17, I think that we're leading people on. I think that we better step back, keep the present limit of 6, because we got 5 applicants, I believe, allow them to be in, and after a year, come back, examine, see where they are, how it's working out.
What 6 are we talking about?
Let me,
what are the 6? I don't know what 6 you're talking about.
I don't either.
Well, that's the limit that we had before.
No, 5.
But we actually had 6, but only 5 made it through. But 6 was the original number.
No, it was 5.
Okay, 5. Okay, 5.
It's not really relevant. It's
not relevant to what I'm saying. It's not relevant to what I'm saying.
Right.
We got to get our numbers right.
Well, we agreed to 5, but we're now going to 17.
Yeah. Okay. Let me
please.
5 Fred, please. The point is, why are we trying to establish some sort of a goal of 17, tripling it? What's the, Mr. Simkowitz, who, by the way, has a long history with San Bernardino. He built much of Hospitality Lane. I've known him for 35 years. And he's a good businessman. He talked about saturation. I'm talking about diminishing returns. Same thing.
I think the state established the one in 12,500. I think that's
the point is, the point is that we don't have to, we need to have the data, whether that's going to be too much. Whether that's going to be too much.
And I agree. And I think the guidelines can stipulate
let competition, filter out. But the point is, these places that are failing are not going to fade away. We're going to have a bunch of failing shops. They're going to be blighting in their retail neighborhoods. Whose retail district do we want to have a failing pot shop located in? So what I'm saying is that we've got, let me take the 6 away and put the 5 in there. And the point is, let's go with the 5, what we've got now, the goal we have now, which we had before, which was reasoned out. The point is that we don't know what the market is. And so let's not lead people on that we're ultimately going to have 17, because what if data shows that it simply does not provide enough? There's not a big enough market.
And I would put that in the guidelines.
Well, let's then keep 5. Let's keep
All right.
5.
Is that a motion? Is that a substitute motion?
Yeah, I'll recommend that we
Well, we don't need, I don't think we have a second on Henry's motion. Do we have a second on Henry's motion? I will second that. Jeez. All right, so we have Henry's motion,
Or Jim,
and so now Mohill, you want to make a substitute?
I'll make a substitute motion that we leave the 5, and till we have some decent data. Don't make decisions without data.
But we have data. We have a year's worth of data.
No, we don't.
Oh.
We haven't had anybody
Yes, we
operating.
do. You know exactly how many
Only
applicants.
one outlet has operated for a year.
Jim,
Only
it's
one.
important that
We
you
have the
qualify
data.
the
We're
5.
finding out we aren't getting movement. Other cities are getting much faster
Yeah,
movement.
let's do one at a time here. Let's do one at a time.
Yeah, the point is, we don't have data on more
We do
than
have data.
more than
Actually, we
one.
do.
No sales tax data. No, we don't.
Exactly, because we aren't getting any movement with the licenses or the applicants that we move forward.
All right, so any other council members before we take up the vote on the substitute motion? City Attorney, any last comments before we take the dive?
Nope, this is purely a policy decision on behalf of the council. I'm happy to draft and implement anything that the council so directs.
Okay, so Mobihill, would you like to restate your? Oh, Sandra's jumping in now. All right, Sandra.
I actually received a concern, somebody that's trying to do distribution and them being, and I guess they're under retailer non-storefront. How will that work out with the state law, Ms. Sonia? Or
You can't stop distribution.
yeah, because they're not gonna have like an actual storefront. They're gonna get orders and they're gonna deliver them.
Yeah.
Are you saying that they're in our process right now?
I'm not sure if they are in the process, but they want to.
Okay, well, I would say with respect, if they want to, we're just simply not prepared to answer those questions because the council hasn't even made that decision yet. If the council makes that decision, we'll come back with the guidelines. That's one of the reasons why the guidelines aren't in front of you today, because we really didn't want to lead people on or confuse them until you made the ultimate policy decision. If you decide to increase them, then we'll come back with the guidelines, which will answer your question. If you decide not to increase them, then we won't have to change the guidelines.
Can I ask for a point of clarification on the motion?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say as soon as people
Yeah.
stop
Yeah.
talking.
Yeah.
I would like to keep the retail limited to 5 for at least a year to find out just how successful the 5 are.
Now, how about the other categories? That's my question. What about the categories that are not retail? Can we increase those? Can we lift the cap on those?
Like what, micro?
Yeah, all
Micro-
the other categories that aren't retail.
I know we had talked about we don't care if we turn into the production capital of the world as long as it's not retail, right? We had discussed that at the last council meeting before. So if that would be your substitute motion, Mobihill, to have limit 5 to retail for a year, come back with good data, and then allow for the remaining businesses or business types to run rampant in the city, basically.
Well, I'd like to lift the caps on the other categories at least. I mean, since those are not controversial, I don't know. I'd like to get my colleague, council member Mulvihill's opinion.
Again, the micro businesses will not include a retail element.
They could.
Right. What I would say is that if a micro business includes the retail, then they have to
some
fall
that do.
under that cap.
Correct.
Okay,
Fall
may
under
I
that.
interject one thing, and I'm going to ask Stephanie to confirm this. Stephanie, what is our cap on the micro businesses that we assume will contain a retail component?
Our cap right now on micro businesses is 5. We currently have 4 that contain a retail aspect.
Here we go. Thank you. So just so the council's clear, that's a total of 9. If you were to take that other action and allow for those 2 transitions, that would be a total of 11.
Stephanie, how many of those micro businesses are actually being processed?
Actually, all of them are in the process currently.
And they all have retail elements. Just 4 out of 5.
Just 4 out of 5.
Yeah, okay.
And that,
So
that's
Jim,
Now,
what-
those, now, also just to be clear, now when if we approve to allow those retailers that want a micro to convert, what happens to those retail licenses then?
See, what I want to do, and the
right
point I
now
want to
it's
make is that we
written.
don't know what the market is.
I get that. I get that. I'm trying to figure out the mechanics of all.
Yes, so the answer to your question is, if you did allow the other two to transition, then they don't get to keep their retail. It's a trade-in, the way it's drafted, because we don't want to have more. So in that instance, you could end up with a maximum of 11 or 9, just depending on who are the people that trade in. So under this proposal, as I hear the council discussing it and the motion on the floor, would be 5 retail, 5 micros with a retail component, but we know we only have 4 right now, and the possibility of transitioning 2 to a micro business. And we don't even know if they'll take advantage of that.
What?
You have to,
Councilmember Mulvihill and Charette, understanding the mechanics of this and how the trade-in might work, would you be amenable to saying 11 retail and or micro with a retail component? So from 17 go down to the 11, so we don't run into an issue where we get hung up on the original ordinance.
Henry, to answer your question for myself, I think yes.
Okay.
But you still have to, in order to trade in, you still have to qualify to be up and running by the 31st.
Yes.
As long as
that will be addressed.
As long as we have not impaired them from opening.
Right.
As long as they are ready to open and be operational by the 31st. So
I can go with this. I'm not 100% comfortable, but I'm more comfortable going with this if we can get to the 11 and lift the cap on everything else. And we'll do the 11 retail and or micro with a retail component. We can do that. I think we got a deal.
And that would be, and that would be really, we've got 4. That leaves, is 1 still open for someone to come in?
there is one of them, I think, Stephanie, that's currently in the process.
Okay.
Is
Yeah,
that
if we
micro
did
or
11, it would technically it would open 1 more retail up potentially, but it would address the trade-in issue for a retailer that went to a micro with a retail.
So Henry, are you withdrawing your motion?
I will withdraw it if the substitute motion makers will amend their substitute motion.
Okay, I'll
Can I
amend
get
the,
clarification?
amend the substitute
Well,
motion.
Mobile will repeat his motion.
Okay,
Can I get
Pull
a
out
point of
paper and pen.
clarification first?
Yeah, pull out paper and pen and get it done.
okay. Is Stephanie still here? Because I'm gonna have to ask her.
Can I get a
Stephanie.
point of, can I get a point of clarification though?
Yeah, well, I need to get a point of clarification too. Stephanie, where are you?
I'm right here.
Okay. Right now, out of the 5 retail, we've got four. We have a total, are all 5 under, well, I shouldn't say, 2 are operational, and there's another 3 that are in process?
Okay, maybe we should pull up that grid again that we got last time so everybody can see it.
Need an update.
Yeah, I think everybody needs to see how the numbers work before we
Well, I think,
jump.
I think we can answer that question. My understanding.
Yeah,
is
but I think it
five
helps you to,
originally.
if you see it, then
And
you can
of those
understand what we're
5,
trying to get done.
There are 5 qualified, and 2 of them are actually up and operating, and 2 or 3 more are ready to begin operating very quickly.
On the retail, just the retail.
Of the retail, right? And if any of those 3 make the deadline of the 31st
of December,
they can trade in.
31st of August.
August.
Trade in. And of the micros, there's only 4. So there really is, and that
like 9.
one that is allowable under our ordinance has not been requested or filled, correct?
Right, that's why I'm saying it's really going to be, if you carry this out, the point of clarification is it looks like it's 9. If they take advantage of the transfer, it could be 11. And so what you would do is under the ordinance, you would just amend it to add that language that Councilmember Nickel recommended earlier, the addition of the 5 words, and we would change the number from 17 to 11.
To 11.
That would
I'll
be the
second.
change.
Yeah, we can.
We already got a motion.
Yeah,
though.
we got a motion as a substitute. Councilmember Mobile, is that amenable?
That's, it's amenable.
All right.
I think that works.
Any other points of clarification before we take a vote?
Well, yes, one.
Oh, geez.
It may be irrelevant, but I want to stress that PD and we as code have to get on top of those illegal operations, because all of what we're beating up and doing tonight means nothing if we don't shut down the black market.
Yeah.
Now, also, I just need some clarification, Ms. City Attorney. Now, any of those applicants can convert to a micro with a retail, or just retailers can convert their retail to a micro with a retail?
Whoever may be operating as of August 31st, whoever's operating can ask to trade in their permit for a micro.
And that micro, they could choose to do a retail component, because we also have a distribution that may want to trade in as well.
Right. So let's just say arguably that before
And that
August
accounts for that
1st,
11 that you're talking about, right?
Exactly.
Yes.
It provides us a flexibility. Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Also, another point of clarification, Ms. City Attorney, and maybe our staff can answer. For those that do change their license type, do they have to go through a different process? Because I believe every type had to have different checklists.
And that is
How will that
where
work
the
out?
guidelines come into play. And yes, and we will, Stephanie and Elizabeth have already done a very good job of identifying the type of due diligence they're going to want to have those folks do. So when we get the guidelines to you, there's going to be an application process where they can come in and say, we qualify to trade in our license. And then they're going to say, this is how we're going to do it. We're going to bring that back to you. My goal would be to get it back to you in 2 weeks, but I just want to honestly tell you, I want to make sure it's absolutely right. Don't want to bring you something that's going to create litigation again or uncertainty, but our goal is to get it back to you in 2 weeks.
Okay.
City Clerk, if you can please, I would ask you to read out the motion, but someone else is going to speak up. Maybe just take the vote.
I've got it.
Theodore, I'm done talking.
All right. Ms. City Clerk, if you can please call roll.
Yes. Councilmember Sanchez,
Yes.
Councilmember Ibarra,
Yes.
Councilmember Figueroa,
No.
Councilmember Charette,
Yes.
Councilmember Nickel,
Yes.
Councilmember Richard,
No.
Councilmember Mulvihill.
Yes.
The motion passes 5-2.
Thank you.
All right. Does that mean we don't need to address the number 2?
No, we still need to address number 2.
You still need to address number 2, but we will be making some amendments to it, because if you still want to allow for the trade-ins for those operating August 31st, we still want to establish the deadlines, because we want to force people to hurry up and perfect their permits. And you're going to give us direction on those guidelines, which will address relocations and expansion. So yes, you need to adopt the resolution 2020-190.
Okay. All right. I would move to approve.
And I'll second.
All right. Any council members wanting to speak on this issue? If not, Ms. City Clerk, if you can please call the roll.
Yes. Councilmember Sanchez,
Yes.
Councilmember Ibarra,
Yes.
Councilmember Figueroa,
No.
Councilmember Charette,
Yes.
Councilmember Nickel,
Yes.
Councilmember Richard,
No.
Councilmember Mulvihill.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-2.
Okay, thank you very much, council members, and thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Let's move on to item number 5, public hearing on annexation number 4 to Community Facilities District 2019-1. The following recommendation is as stated in your backup material from items 1 through 6. The public hearing is to consider annexation proceedings and the elections for City of San Bernardino Community Facilities District number 2019-1 Maintenance Service Agreement of annexation number 4. The public hearing is now open at 8:57 p.m. Are there any disclosures from council members? Hearing none, Madam City Clerk, do we have proof of publication that the notice has been required by law have been given?
Yes.
Do we have the complete file of exhibits, correspondence, and other documents?
Yes.
And are there any written communications on this matter?
No.
All right. Will the staff please introduce yourself and present the staff report?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to just take you through very quickly. Public hearing agenda items 5 through 8 actually are related, all to the same property, the future Rancho Palma development project that is located on West Little League Drive near Palm Avenue. There are 3 parcels associated with the project, 2 of which will be developed with 119 residential homes. And TrueMark Homes is the owner and developer of those residential parcels. We also have Strata Palma, who happens to be the owner of the 3rd parcel, which is designated for commercial development. As with all new developments, both TrueMark and Strata Palma must comply with certain conditions of approval for their developments to be accepted by the city. These conditions in this case include annexation of these properties into various community facilities districts, or CFDs. And the CFDs are mechanisms that ensure that the properties contribute to ongoing revenues through tax roll assessments, to contribute to maintenance related to public improvements on those properties, as well as public safety services. So agenda item 5 and 6 will actually annex the TrueMark and Strata properties into our existing maintenance CFD, which is 2019-1. Our first public hearing, as you mentioned, Mayor, is on annexation 4, which is the residential portion with TrueMark. The next public hearing will actually be annexation number 5, which will be Strata's Commercial Center into that same maintenance district. And item 7 is for the public safety services for the residential piece. Item 8 is also related to the residential development and proposes to form a CFD at the request of TrueMark for financing some public improvements. Mr. Jim Slobodjan, our acting director of finance, is here with us tonight, and he can take you through that one. The city council had previously inquired as to the timing on the residential development, so I just wanted to let you know very quickly that it's our understanding that TrueMark's planned development schedule anticipates beginning to build homes on their properties in the 4th quarter of calendar year 2021, with completion occurring sometime in 2023. So I know that was a lot, but I just kind of wanted to tie all 4 of these upcoming public hearing items together. While they must be administered individually, we just really wanted to make sure that you had the background so we didn't have to kind of keep repeating the same pieces. So at this time, we'll let you know that each of the public hearings were separately noticed in compliance with government code, and we would ask the mayor and city council consider the public hearing items beginning with annexation 4 into CFD 2019-1.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Jensen. Does that conclude your report?
Yes.
All right, Ms. City Clerk, did you receive any requests to speak from anyone wishing to speak on the matter? If so, the city will now recognize those individuals.
No, there were no requests to speak.
All right, would the city staff like to make any further comments?
No.
Do any members of the city council have any questions of staff or wish to make any comments before I close this hearing? Very good. Has the city clerk received written protest to any of the matters addressed in the public hearing from any registered voters of landowners of more than 50% of the acreage located within the property to be annexed to Community Facilities District number 2019-1?
I have received 0 protests.
Okay, very good. Thank you. I now declare the hearing closed, the time being 9:01 p.m. I'd like to entertain a motion for the resolution of the Mayor and City Council calling election to submit the qualified electors that requesting levying a special tax within the area proposed of 2019-1, annexation number 4. Is there a motion?
So move.
By Mulvihill and a second by
I'll second.
Councilman Charette. Are there any further discussions? If not, let's do a voice vote, please. Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Sanchez,
Yes.
Councilmember Ibarra,
Yes.
Councilmember Figueroa,
Yes.
Councilmember Charette,
Yes.
Councilmember Nickel,
Yes.
Councilmember Richard,
Yes.
Councilmember Mulvey.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you very much, Ms. City Clerk. The resolution that we have adopted calls for the elections within the property to be annexed CFD 2019-1 to approve such annexation and to authorize the levy of the special tax in accordance with the rate method of apportionment to provide certain services within such property, which is to be held at this time by the city clerk. The city clerk?
All ballots have been cast in connection with the election for CFD number 2019-1, and the election is now closed. Each of the ballot propositions have been approved by more than 2/3 of the votes cast in the elections for CFD number 2019-1.
Having received a certificate of the city clerk certifying the results of the election, I'd entertain a motion to approve a resolution of the mayor and city council of the city of San Bernardino declaring election results for Community Facilities District number 2019-1, annexation number 4. Is there a motion?
So moved.
By Nickel, second by
Second.
Mulvihill. Any further discussion? If not, Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Okay. Councilmember Sanchez,
Yes.
Councilmember Ibarra,
Yes.
Councilmember Figueroa,
Yes.
Councilmember Charette,
Yes.
Councilmember Nickel,
Yes.
Councilmember Richard,
Yes.
Councilmember Mulvihill.
Yes.
The motion passes 7-0.
Thank you very much. Moving on to item number 6. Number 6 is a public hearing on annexation number 5 to Community Facilities District 2019-1. The public hearing is now open at approximately 9:03 p.m. Are there any disclosures from our council members? Hearing none, Madam City Clerk, do we have proof of publication that the notices as required by law have been issued?
Yes.
All right, do we have complete file of exhibits, correspondence, and other documents?
Yes.
Are there any written communications on the matter?
No.
Will the staff representative please introduce yourself and present the staff report? Reminder, council members, Ms. Jensen, if you were listening, she gave a preview of all of this. Ms. Jensen, are there any additional reports?
Just a quick hit that this is the commercial property that we're annexing into the maintenance district.
Thank you, madam.
Excuse, is there any way we can take them all together? Is that what you're suggesting, Mayor?
No, just that we can't.
Okay.
We have to go through this long script, so.
Thank you. Thank
But
you.
we'll abbreviate it by that, and thank you for the presentation, Ms. Jensen. Ms. City Clerk, did you receive any requests to speak from anyone wishing to speak on the matter?
No.
So, all right. Would the city staff like to make any further comments? Seeing none, do any members of the council have any questions of staff or wish to make any comments before I close the hearing? Seeing none, has the city clerk received written protests to any of the matters addressed in this public hearing from the registered voters or landowners of more than 50% of the acreage located in the property to be annexed to community? How about I just say CFD number 2019-1?
I have received 0 written protests.
Okay, very good. I now declare this hearing closed, the time being 9:05 p.m. I'd like to entertain a motion to adopt the resolution of the Mayor and City Council of the City of San Bernardino calling an election to submit to the qualified electors a question of levying a special tax within this area proposed to be annexed to Community Facilities Districts number 2019-1, annexation number 5. Is there a motion?
So moved.
By Nichols, second by?
Second.
By Mulvihill. Thank you. Are there any other further discussion?
Mayor, if I may?
Yes.
We also have, with both of these, introducing the ordinance changes for the levying of special taxes. I don't know if that was in there, but those are part of the recommendations as well. I just want to make sure that.
Yeah, that's out. Yeah, I see it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, on the aforementioned, we have a motion by Nickel and Mulvihill, I think it was. Is that
Right. Yes.
Yes.
All right, if there's no further discussion, Ms. City Clerk, please call the roll on that matter, please.
Councilmember Sanchez,
Yes.
Councilmember Ibarra,
Yes.
Councilmember Figueroa,
Yes.
Councilmember Charette,
Yes.
Councilmember Nickel,
Yes.
Councilmember Richard,
Yes.
Councilmember Mulvihill.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. The resolution that we've just adopted calls for elections within the property to be annexed to CFD number 2019 to approve such annexation and to authorize the levy of the special tax in accordance with the rate and method of apportionment to provide certain services within such property, which is to be held at this time by the city clerk. The city clerk?
Okay, all ballots have been cast in connection with the election for CFD number 2019-1, and the election is now closed. Each of the ballot propositions have been approved by more than 2/3 of the votes cast in the elections for CFD number 2018-1.
Thank you. Having received a certificate from the city clerk certifying the results of the election, I'd like to entertain a motion now to approve a resolution of the Mayor City Council of the City of San Bernardino declaring the election results for Community Facilities District 2019-1, annexation number 5. Is there a motion?
So moved.
By Mulvihill. Second
Second.
by Nickel. Any further discussion? If not, Ms. City Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Sanchez,
Yes.
Councilmember Ibarra,
Yes.
Councilmember Figueroa,
Yes.
Councilmember Charette,
Yes.
okay, Councilmember Nickel,
Yes.
Councilmember Richard,
Yes.
okay, and Councilmember Mulvihill.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 7-0.
Okay, very good. Moving on to item number 7, annexation of number 1 to Community CFD District 2018-1. The public hearing is to consider annexation proceedings and elections for City of San Bernardino Community CFD District 2018-1 Safety Services Annexation number 1. The public hearing is now open at approximately 9:08 p.m. Are there any disclosures from council members? Hearing none, Madam City Clerk, do you have proof of publication that the notices as required by law have been issued?
Yes.
Do we have the complete file of exhibits, correspondence, and other documents?
Yes.
Very good. Are there any written communications on this issue?
No.
Will the staff then represent, the representative, please introduce yourself and present the staff report?
Hi, good meeting. This is Jim Slobodian, Acting Finance Director. And on this one, 2018-1, what we're looking to do is to annex in certain properties to provide for police protection services. So in order to annex into the property to the CFD, pursuant to the provisions of California Government Code, Section 53311, the city is going to take the following actions tonight, and that would be to hold a public hearing, adopt a resolution calling for the election, hold a special landowner election and canvass the election, and adopt a resolution declaring the results of the special landowner election. On this one, upon the full completion of the development, it is estimated that there will be a special tax collection in the amount of $45,815, which will be used to fund those police protection services as well as any city or county costs associated with the administration of the tax. If you have any questions, we have our tax consultant, Shane Spicer, here tonight as well.
Okay, that concludes the staff report. Thank you, Mr. Slobodian. I appreciate it. Ms. City Clerk, do we receive any requests to speak from anyone wishing to speak on the matter?
No, we did not.
Would the city staff like to make any further comments? Seeing none, moving on to our city council members. Do any members of the council have any questions of staff or wish to make any comments before I close this hearing? Seeing none, has the city clerk received written protest to any of the matters addressed in the public hearing from any registered voters or landowners of more than 50% of the acreage located within the property to be annexed to CFD number 2018-1?
I have received 0 written protests.
Thank you. I now declare this hearing closed, the time being approximately 9:11 p.m. May I have a motion to adopt the resolution of the Mayor City Council?
So moved.
as a successor agency, legislative body of the city of San Bernardino for CFD number 2018-1, annexing territory to community CFD number 2018-1 and calling elections therein. Motion by Nickel.
I'll second.
Second by Ibarra. Thank you. And any discussion? All right, Ms. City Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Yes. Councilmember Sanchez.
Yes.
Councilmember Ibarra.
Yes.
Councilmember Figueroa.
Yes.
Councilmember Charette.
Yes.
Councilmember Nickel.
Yes.
Councilmember Richard.
Yes.
And Councilmember Mulvihill.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. The resolution that we have just adopted calls for elections within the property to be annexed to CFD number 2018-1 to approve such annexation and to authorize the levy of the special tax in accordance with the rate and method of apportionment to provide certain services within such property, which is to be held by the city clerk. The city clerk?
Sorry. I'm sorry, I lost my spot. Can you repeat that?
Yes. Having received the resolution we've just adopted calls for elections within the property to be annexed to CFD 2018 to approve such annexation and to authorize the levy of the special tax in accordance with the rate and method of apportionment to provide certain services within such property, which is to be held at this time by our city clerk. Ms. City Clerk?
Yes, so I have all ballots have been cast in connection with the election of CFD number 2018-1, and the election is now closed. Each of the ballot propositions have been approved by more than 2/3 of the votes cast in the elections for CFD number 2018-1.
Thank you. Having received a certificate of the city clerk certifying the results of this election, I'd entertain a motion to approve the resolution of the Mayor and City Council of the City of San Bernardino, acting as the legislative body of the Community Facilities District 2018-1 and certifying the results of the August 5th, 2020 annexation and special tax election. Motion by?
So moved.
Councilman Nickel, second by Councilmember Ibarra. Is that right? Thank you, ma'am. All right. Are there any other further discussion? If not, Ms. City Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Sanchez.
Yes.
Councilmember Ibarra.
Yes.
Councilmember Figueroa.
Yes.
Councilmember Charette.
Yes.
Councilmember Nickel.
Yes.
Councilmember Richard.
Yes.
Councilmember Mulvihill.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 7-0. And Mayor, I just want to clarify, I'm not sure, we're a little fast, but did we miss the ordinance component of the public hearing?
That's that's the next portion, isn't it?
Okay. Okay.
So we're moving on to item number 8. Are you with me, Smith City Court? Okay,
yes.
Cool. All right. Number 8. This is the public hearing to consider the formation of Community Facilities District 2020-1, Rancho Palma, the levy of special taxes and the incurring of bonded indebtedness for the CFD district. The public hearing is now open. The time is approximately 9:15 p.m. Are there any disclosures from council members? Seeing none, Madam City Clerk, do you have proof of publication that the notices as required by the law have been given?
Yes.
Do you have the complete file of exhibits, correspondence, and other documents?
Yes.
Are there any written correspondence on this matter?
No.
Will the staff please present and introduce yourself this report?
Hi, this is Jim Slobodjan again. This one, on July 1st, 2020, the Mayor and City Council approved Resolution 2021-49, declaring its intent to form Community Facilities District 2020-1. The property owner, TH Rancho Palma, has requested the city to assist in forming CFD 2020-1 to finance certain public improvements through the levy of a special tax and the issuance of bonds in the amount of $5 million. The proposed development to be included in the CFD includes 119 detached single-family residential properties known as Rancho Palma. Those are on 28 acres in tract 20006. So the CFD public hearing report was prepared by Spicer Consulting Group, and it describes and analyzes the facilities to be financed by the CFD, along with the estimated cost of such facilities. If we wish to hear that, the details of that report, Shane Spicer from Spicer Consulting Group is here with us tonight. And he can present
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Slobosian. Seeing none, we'll move on to our city clerk. The city clerk, did you receive any requests to speak from anyone wishing to speak on the matter? If so, each person may address the council now.
No, I did not receive any requests.
Okay, thank you. Would the city staff like to make any further comments? Do any members of the city council have any questions for staff before I close the public hearing? Okay. Has the city clerk received written protest to any of the matters addressed in this public hearing from any registered voters or landowners of more than 50% of the acreage located within the property to be formed by CFD district number 2020-1?
I have received 0 written protests.
Very good, thank you. I now declare the hearing closed, the time being approximately 9:17 p.m. May I have a motion to adopt the resolution of the mayor and city council establishing Community Facilities District 2020-1 Rancho La Palma of the city of San Bernardino and the boundaries thereof, and approving a funding and acquisition agreement?
So moved.
By Nickel, and second by
Second.
Councilmember Richard. You're there.
It's out there.
Okay. All right. Very good. Is there any discussion? Not, so noted. And Miss City Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Sanchez?
Yes.
Okay. Councilmember Ibarra?
Yes.
Councilmember Figueroa? Yes. Councilmember Charette?
Yes.
Councilmember Nickel?
Yes.
Councilmember Richard?
Yes.
Councilmember Mulvihill?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. May I have a motion to adopt the resolution of the mayor and city council of the city of San Bernardino determining the necessity to incur a bonded indebtedness for Community Facilities District 2020-1 Rancho Palma, submitting to the qualified electors of the Community Facilities District a proposition to authorize the levy of a special tax therein, and to authorize such Community Facilities District to incur a bonded indebtedness secured by the levy of a special there's a word missing, therein to finance
Special tax.
Yeah, special tax. Types of public facilities and establish a portions limit for such CFD and calling a special election for the CFD on a proposition for incurring such bonded indebtedness. Whew. That's a long one, folks.
You need a motion?
Yeah.
So move. So
Please.
moved.
Who's my second?
We just have to fix the wording.
Council member, is that you on a second, Ibarra?
Sure, but we just have to fix the wording.
So noted. If the city
Yeah.
clerk would please. All right. Any discussion? If not, we have a motion by Nichols, second by Ibarra. Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Sanchez?
Yes.
Councilmember Ibarra?
Yes.
Councilmember Figueroa?
Yes.
Councilmember Charette?
Yes.
Councilmember Nickel?
Yes.
Councilmember Richard?
Yes.
Councilmember Mulvihill?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 7-0.
Okay, you guys think we're done, but we're not. There's like a few more long paragraphs here, so just stay with me. May I have a motion to adopt the resolution of the Mayor and City Council of the City of San Bernardino calling a special election and submitting to the voters of Community Facilities District 2020-1 Rancho Palma of the City of San Bernardino propositions regarding the annual levy of special taxes within the CFD to pay principal of and interest on bonds thereof and to pay the cost of public facilities and establishing an appropriations limit thereof. Motion
So moved.
by Nickel, second by
Second.
Councilmember Richard. Is there any further discussion?
Mayor,
Oh, please. Yes.
no.
Let's keep on
know.
talking about it.
I'm
I was getting a
sorry.
bit bored. I was getting a bit bored. Thank you, Sandra.
Yes, Miss Jensen,
Yeah,
please.
so it was me, Councilmember Charette.
Oh,
My
I'm sorry. I
apologies
thought
all.
it was Sandra.
So I just want to be clear, and I really apologize for interrupting a couple public hearings back. There are ordinances that need to be introduced for each of these, and that's what I was trying to kind of flag, that we do need to acknowledge the ordinance.
So
piece.
why don't we let them finish this, and then when they're done with it, we can go back and fill in the blanks on the others.
Perfect. I'm going to mute
Okay.
myself now.
Okay.
Okay, and then Miss Jensen and Miss Carvalho, when the time is appropriate, we'll get back into the procedural
I'll let Miss Jensen do that.
gobbledygook. All right, very good, awesome. Okay, we have a motion by Nichols, second by Richard. Any further discussion? If not, Miss City Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Sanchez,
Yes.
Councilmember Ibarra,
Yes.
Councilmember Figueroa,
Yes.
Councilmember Charette,
Yes.
Councilmember Nickel,
Yes.
Councilmember Richard.
Yes.
Okay, and Councilmember Mulvihill.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. The resolutions that we have just adopted calls for elections with CFD number 2020-1 to authorize the levy of the special tax in accordance with the rate and method of apportionment, authorizes the issuance of bonded indebtedness for CFD number 2020-1 in the maximum principal amount of $5 million, and establishes a portions limit for CFD 2020-1, which is to be held at this time by the city clerk. Ms. City Clerk?
Okay, so all ballots have been cast in connection with the election for CFD number 2020-1, and the election is now closed. Each of the ballot propositions have been approved by more than 2/3 of the votes cast in the elections for CFD number 2020-1.
Thank you. Having received a certificate from the city clerk certifying the results of this election, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the resolution of the Mayor and City Council of the City of San Bernardino declaring the results of the consolidated special elections within Community Facilities District 2020-1 Rancho Palma. Is there a motion?
So moved.
By Nichols, second by
Second.
Mulvihill. Awesome. Thank
Thank you.
you. Is there any further discussion? No one? No one? Okay.
Oh, all right. I'll discuss it. What do you guys want to discuss? Just kidding.
All right. Ms. City Clerk, please call the roll.
Okay, Councilmember Sanchez,
Yes.
Councilmember Ibarra,
Yes.
Councilmember Figueroa,
Yes.
Member Charette,
Yes.
Councilmember Nickel,
Yes.
Councilmember Richard,
Yes.
Councilmember Mulvihill.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. I'd now ask for a motion to waive further reading and introduce by title only an ordinance of the Mayor and City Council of the City of San Bernardino, California, acting as a legislative body of Community Facilities District 2020-1 Rancho Palma, authorizing the levy of special taxes in such community facilities district. Is there a motion?
So moved.
I'll move it.
Let's give Fred a shot.
All right. I'll second Fred's
How about a
motion.
second? Okay, cool.
Thank you. And I want to apologize. I know this is serious, and I didn't want to make light of it.
No problem. We need a little levity here and there. Okay, motion by Councilman Charette, second by Nickel. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, Ms. City Clerk, please call the roll.
Okay, Councilmember Sanchez,
Yes.
Councilmember Ibarra,
Yes.
Councilmember Figueroa,
Yes.
Councilmember Charette,
Yes.
Councilmember Nickel,
Yes.
Councilmember Richard,
Yes.
Councilmember Movijo.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Okay, take a drink of water and do some jumping jacks, somebody. We did it. That took us about 20 minutes, 22 minutes. Okay, moving on to item number 9 is his vehicle's mile traveled thresholds of significance. The recommendations on the floor there for you folks. Do we need a staff presentation or would you like to move for approval? Let's have a staff report, I guess. The city manager.
Looks like we've got Oliver Mahika here to present. Is that correct? Oliver, you're muted.
Okay, here I am. Well, I was crossing my fingers for the staff waiver, but I guess it's not going to happen. Anyway, the item before you is it's kind of a work in progress that we've been working with. Well, the state's been working. Back in 2013, the state legislature adopted kind of a shift in how we are doing our CEQA analysis. Bore you a little bit, if I may. If you may recall, whenever we bring items before you, negative declarations or environmental impact reports, they usually require a traffic study. So maybe if you could go back to the first slide, please. And so anyway, that is shifted now. Rather than measuring our traffic by level of service, we're going to do it by vehicle miles traveled. And when our consultants do the presentation, they'll give you a little bit of a difference. But by way of background, since 2013, there's been a lot of efforts being put in place by the governor's Office of Planning and Research, and then along with SCAG. If you recall or aware, SCAG has recently completed their regional transportation plan, which we participated in about a couple of years ago. In that process, what they did was they broke the city up into about 40 or 50 sections. Where we literally sat down in our conference room on the third floor there, and we went block by block, and SCAG had identified all the vacant parcels. And at that time, going around the table, we identified what the zoning was, what the potential, if it was residential property, what the potential density would be allowed for that property, how many units, in other words. If it was a commercial or industrial property, we would identify what the potential square footage would be. And so it took us a good 2 or 3 months to go through that process, going through all these sheets. And from there, it was incorporated into SCAG's plan, and they kind of estimate what the regional or what San Bernardino's population growth is going to be, what development intensity there's going to be. At the time, we're going through this exercise and not really knowing what's going to happen with all this data. And so as it turns out, as a result of those initial workshops, then SBCTA, they took on the effort where they worked with all of its member cities within the county to kind of go through what does this formula really mean. The state office, they finally adopted the procedures or the guidelines or what have you in 2018, and from there SBCTA has been working with the cities to kind of identify what are the appropriate thresholds for the city. There are a couple of options that the city can choose from. In our recommendations, we did retain the services from Fair and Pierce. They're a well-recognized traffic engineering firm. They were actually the firm that was retained by SBCTA to assist them in their analysis and what have you. And so as it turned out, that exercise that I mentioned that we took place 2 or 3 years ago at in our break room, or excuse me, the conference room, actually benefited us because we have a greater capacity for development in the city, and where some cities where they're built out and there's really no more room to grow, and what lack of vacant properties or whatever, they're kind of in a bind. It's going to be a little challenging for them to go through the CEQA process. Within the last couple of weeks, I think, or last couple of months, I should say, I think I've learned more about traffic engineering since President Reagan's first term in office, as long as I've been doing this. And so it's it's a little bit of shift. It's going to be favorable to us. I would consider that we are development friendly. That's one of the things that we had kind of pointed out to the consulting firms and SBCTA, that we want to maintain that. And so the recommendation for you is to adopt what we are calling the better than general plan build out threshold. And like I said, it's because of the characteristics of a city, there is a lot of room for development. I will end up by, when I mentioned it related to the general plan, as you know, we will be updating our general plan within the next 3 years. There is opportunities to revise these thresholds over time. So when we start going through our traffic analysis, usually it's one of the first things that we start going through in our general plan update. If we start recognizing that there's certain things or adjustments that we need to do in our thresholds, we can do that at that certain time. So this isn't a one-time situation. We can make adjustments and modify the thresholds as needed. With that, I'd like to introduce Jason Park and Delia Vogt. They're both from Fair and Pierce. They, like I mentioned, they work with SBCTA, and they were very, very helpful in at least helping me understand what all this is going to be and helping us with the guidelines. And with that, Jason, Dahlia, if you would please do the rest of the presentation. Thank you.
Hi, Oliver. Good evening, Council and Mr. Mayor. As Oliver mentioned, my name is Delia Vogt. I'm a senior engineer with Fair and Pierce, and we'll be discussing briefly tonight the change in transportation impacts under CEQA. So next slide, please. So as Oliver mentioned, this legislation was originally passed in 2013, and it has changed how we are required to study transportation impacts when we're looking at the CEQA process. So there are 3 stated goals of this legislation. They are to promote infill development, promote public health through active transportation, and to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So the challenge for lead agencies such as the City of San Bernardino is to appropriately balance their local goals and values and their need for congestion management with those 3 statewide goals. Next slide, please. So SB 743 eliminates the use of level of service, or LOS, meaning auto delay, as the metric for determining significant transportation impacts. So currently we use level of service to identify where there is an unacceptable amount of delay on roadways and intersections, and the typical mitigation measure is to widen those roadways or intersections. Next slide, please. So SB 743 replaces level of service with vehicle miles traveled, or VMT. VMT is the number of trips times trip length, excuse me. So VMT will be the new metric for determining transportation impacts under CEQA. And so rather than having those vehicle delay impacts at intersections of roadways, we will have impacts to the transportation system as a whole. And instead of roadway widenings, mitigations will focus now on shortening vehicle trip distances or reducing the number of vehicle trips on the roadway network. Next slide, please. So the City of San Bernardino have participated in a study led by SBCTA and Fair and Pierce that covered the entire San Bernardino County region. And so city staff have taken the recommendations and information from the SBCTA study and identified their preferred threshold of significance. As Oliver mentioned, that threshold will be based in the city's general plan. The general plan is adopted through a public process. It's reflective of the goals and values of the community, and it includes all of that planned development growth and transportation improvements. So a project will need to generate less VMT per person than the average generated under the general plan in order to have a less than significant transportation impact under CEQA. And I do just want to note here that this change only applies to projects going through the CEQA process. So if a project is exempt from CEQA or is not required to look at CEQA, this change does not apply. So this is only when we're looking through the CEQA process. Next slide. And so the recommendation from staff here is to adopt the resolution, adopting that threshold of significance identified on the previous slide. And with that, that concludes this presentation, and Jason and I are both on the line and happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Delia, can you go back to slide number 6, please?
Absolutely. Whoever's controlling the PowerPoint, please.
I'm sorry. I guess it's 5. My apologies. So this will go into effect when we adopt the new city's general plan. That's my first question. And secondly, does this impact, regardless, irrespective of the CEQA requirement, does it, it has effects on both commercial and residential?
It does, Mr. Mayor, it does apply to both residential and commercial properties. And so once the law was signed into law in 2013, the deadline to implement it was actually July 1st, 2020. So as of July 1st, all projects studying transportation impacts are required to study VMT, vehicle miles traveled.
From that point forward, July 2020.
Correct.
Okay, council members, Councilmember Charette, sir, go ahead.
Thank you. I have one question, and that is how I think we all understand that COVID-19 is going, we've all been stuck inside. Businesses have found that their employees do not need to travel as much back to and from work. Is this study and is this SB 743 take any of the COVID-19 future, I guess, what would I say, assumptions into consideration?
Yes, absolutely. So telecommuting is a piece of reducing VMT, absolutely. As you point out, we're all living through it currently. And we did look at how much potential reduction you could achieve from instituting telecommuting. That was part of this study. That's correct.
Okay, so it is, but it's kind of, we don't really know what that is until probably next year or beyond. And that could that impact this study? Could that impact this? And would it be impacted in a positive or a negative direction?
So you're absolutely right. We won't know the effects, the full effects of COVID on travel until in the coming years. However, the threshold that's being adopted is actually based on the city's general plan. And so until the city's general plan is updated, that threshold will stay static. And so they won't actually be affected by the changing conditions until the general plan is updated.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Council members, anybody else? If not, motion for approval.
I'll move it.
Second by?
Second.
Councilman Mulvihill. And final question from me. I'm sorry, Ms. City Clerk, do we have a couple caveats here? I apologize. We opened the public hearing at approximately 9:26 p.m. And Ms. City Clerk, do we have any public comments?
No, we did not.
Okay, very good. I'm now closing the public hearing at approximately 9:39 p.m. for deliberation and action. We have a motion from Councilman Charette and Councilman Mulvihill. Are there any other final questions? Mike, can this be amended and revisited as the needs of our city and development flourish? What are the can this be amended, and is this a dynamic equation that we can always revisit?
Yes, you can. So as it stands right now, as the consultant had mentioned, it's currently static based on current general plan. So as we go through the process and amend the city's general plan, we modify the land use, and that's going to actually change how we look at vehicle miles traveled at that point.
Are there any additional associated costs with the implementation of VMT? I mean, how does this impact?
Not at all.
None?
Not at all. What it really affects is it changes the methodology for how we do traffic reports, and it changes the methodology for how we evaluate traffic impacts.
Okay, very good. All right, there's a motion for approval and a second. The City Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Sanchez?
Yes.
Councilmember Ibarra?
Yes.
Councilmember Figueroa?
Yes.
Councilmember Charette?
Yes.
Councilmember Nichol,
Yes.
Councilmember Richard,
Yes.
okay, and Councilmember Mulvihill.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you very much. Ms. City Manager, you bring to my attention items number 5 and 6. There was an administrative correction, I think, on my part, and my apologies. How can we correct this? What's your best recommendation, Ms. City Manager, on items 5 and 6?
I believe we just need to go back and introduce the ordinances on those two items, number 5 and 6. We
Okay.
skipped over them.
Ms. City Clerk, would you do those, please?
Yes. So going back to item 5, this is an ordinance of the mayor and the city council of the city of San Bernardino, California, amending ordinance MC and levying special taxes to be collected during fiscal year 2020-21 to pay the annual cost of the maintenance and servicing of landscaping, lighting, water, quality improvements, graffiti, streets, street sweeping, parks, and trail maintenance, a reserve fund for capital replacement and administrative expenses with respect to the City of San Bernardino Community Facilities District number 2019-1 maintenance services. Now we need a motion.
I'll move it.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? If not, Ms. City Clerk, please call the roll.
Give me 1 moment. Okay, Councilmember Sanchez,
Yes.
Councilmember Ibarra,
Yes.
Councilmember Figueroa,
Yes.
Councilmember Charette,
Yes.
Councilmember Nichol,
Yes.
Councilmember Richard,
Yes.
and Councilmember Mulvihill.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Moving on to item number 6, an ordinance of the mayor and the city council of the city of San Bernardino, California, amending ordinance number MC and levying special taxes to be collected during fiscal year 2020-21 to pay the annual cost of the maintenance and servicing of landscaping, lighting, water quality improvements, graffiti, street sweeping, parks and trail maintenance, a reserve fund for capital replacement and administrative expenses with respect to the City of San Bernardino Community Facilities District number 2019-1 maintenance services. And we need a motion for that item.
So moved.
Second.
Yeah, Ms. City Clerk, if you call the roll, please.
Yes. Councilmember Sanchez,
Yes.
Councilmember Ibarra,
Yes.
Councilmember Figueroa,
Yes.
Councilmember Charette,
Yes.
Councilmember Nichol,
Yes.
Councilmember Richard,
Yes.
and Councilmember Mulvihill.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 7-0.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ms. City Clerk. Apologize about that, council members. Let's move on to our consent item, consent calendar. Mayor Pro Tem, you have any polls?
No polls.
Councilmember Ibarra,
No.
Councilmember Figueroa,
None.
Councilmember Charette,
Yes. Item number 14.
Councilmember Nichol,
None.
Councilmember Richard,
None.
Councilmember Mulvihill.
None tonight.
Motion for the balance?
Move the balance.
Second.
All right. Any objections on the balance? So noted. And that has passed. Item number 14 has been pulled by Councilman Charette. Item is the Risk Management Excess General Liability Insurance Program Outcome and Option Selected Update. This is a very important issue. We spoke about, I think it was last council meeting, and there is some significant savings and a great report here. But Councilman Charette, sir, go ahead.
Well, thank you, Mayor. And that's exactly why I wanted to pull it. It is very important. I think the public deserves to have a better, clearer understanding that I believe we'll approve this tonight, but understand exactly what we're doing and how it's impacting us as insured. That's basically why I'm pulling it, just to give a little quick overview from the staff as to exactly what is on this item and why it's so important, and the savings that you've achieved in the process, and just show us what you've come up with.
So Miss City Man, oh, there you are. Okay. Can staff please make a presentation and kind of present the savings on it?
Yes, sure. Thank you, Mayor and City Council. So as you may recall, during the July 15 meeting, staff was authorized to secure excess insurance for an amount not to exceed $3.5 million. That was after the current broker of record at the time, Aon, approached 27, 28 carriers, was unable to secure a quote for the city, a viable option. There were multiple challenges in securing excess insurance for the city, some related to our losses, others related to COVID-19, the impact that it's had on the economy, perceived jury verdicts with regard to police-related claims. So I do need to augment the details of the renewal to correct the description of the policy and the premium noted in the staff report. So I do thank you for the opportunity to do that tonight. So the city, after extensive work, not just with Aon, but we started approaching various carriers and providers of insurance directly at the staff level when we anticipated that Aon would not be successful in being able to place the city's coverage. We, right down to the wire, the proposal that we selected came in, I want to say last Wednesday towards the end of business, and the city was in the position to secure a $25 million excess insurance policy, which is inclusive of a $5 million self-insured retention rate. If you recall, the city transitioned from a $1 million self-insured retention rate to a $5 million last fiscal year. And what this policy means is that the first layer of coverage for the city's insurance is the $5 million in self-insurance. Then it's followed by a $20 million insurance coverage for your total of $25 million. And after extensive efforts of having to go back and forth with the two particular providers that had expressed interest in quoting the city's coverage, we were able to secure this option for $1,050,620. Initially, on July 15, it was anticipated that it would come in around $3.5 million. So the renewal process ultimately ended up being $2.45 million less than the authorized amount that was approved by council on July 15. This concludes my update, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Oh, go ahead, Mayor. Go ahead.
Eddie, just a point of clarification. I think, first off, thank you. I want to commend you for your hard and diligent efforts. This is a cost savings to the city and really a necessary evil of our operations and for doing business here in the city. And we thank you for your hard, diligent work. I think the emphasis is that the city will not dip into the reserves. That's the takeaway, folks. And to our taxpayers, I'm appreciative for council members being very vocal and diligent on their efforts and watchful eye on directing our staff to go hunt down those opportunities. Mr. Charette, go ahead, sir.
Well, I think you've covered it, but just in kind of layman's terms and real simplified for the public, we went from 5 million kind of what we would call the Now, what do I have? Deductible, $5 million deductible to about $1 million deductible. Is that really where we are right now?
We were able to retain the 5 million, so the city transitioned 2 fiscal years ago, essentially, to the 5 million. And so one of the issues that we faced was being able to retain the 5 million SIR that we currently have. So that was preserved for coverage in this fiscal year.
Okay, but our premium, that's what I'm really talking about. Our premium has gone down from what we thought was going to be 5 million to about a little over 1 million. Is that right?
Right. The easiest way to summarize it, it was anticipated to be 3.5. Now it's less than 1.1.
Right.
Bottom line.
Okay, but we still have essentially about a $5 million deductible, right?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Well, that was really all I wanted to make. We're still probably not considered a good risk, but you all have done a great job in getting it to where we are, and I want to commend you for that. And that's why I pulled this, just so we didn't want to just pass it on by. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you. Is that a motion for approval, Mr. Charette?
Yes, sir. Yes, thank you.
Is there a second?
Second.
By Councilman Nickel. If there's no objections, any discussion? No objections? Wonderful. That's a win-win. No brainer, folks. Thank you. Thank you again, Eddie. Great work. Thank you.
You're welcome, Mayor.
All right, moving on to our final item tonight. Thank you, council members. We have items to be referred to committee. I'll now recognize any council members. Councilmember Nichols, sir, go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to ask council direction and support to add 2 items to upcoming agendas. We did receive a sample letter of authorization for a funding opportunity, and I would like to bring that. I did submit that to the city clerk into the record. I would like to have that considered perhaps as a consent item that would authorize staff to evaluate the possibility of obtaining funding through utility financing to address some of our infrastructure needs. I would also, I've heard repeatedly that we need assistance in terms of real estate services. I would like to see an item come forward for council consideration to address the need for a real estate services, a staff augmentation firm to be brought on board to address us with the many real estate issues we're dealing with, particularly City Hall and other facility aspects of the work that needs to get done in very short order. We've got a lot on our plate, and I applaud Mr. Huntley and the work he's doing, but we need some help. We need some help in that department, and let's get to work on seeing what our options are to augment that staff.
Mr. Nickel, that's a motion? Is there a second?
Yeah, I'd like to make that motion and request council support to direct the city manager to add those 2 items to a future.
I'd like to second that for you, Henry. I like those ideas. So I like those 2 ideas, so I second that.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Richard. Councilman, we have a couple council members. Councilman Charette, sir, go ahead.
Yeah, well, thank you, and Henry, I agree with that. I'm big on hiring outside consultants because they don't cost us PERS and other costs that we sometimes are faced with. But I'd like to see if we wouldn't want to consider finding the funding to actually bring someone in-house on staff that is 100% full-time supporting it. If I think I know what you're asking for about projects and real estate development and or sales or getting rid of a piece of real estate or highest and best use of particular properties. Is that what you're talking about, Henry?
Yeah, and I think we've got some really big projects that are hitting us right now, and I don't know if long term I'm willing to commit to a new position, but I think we need some assistance, and we need to augment the staff immediately and provide some support, and that's what I've been hearing consistently.
And
we need
Henry,
it.
I agree with that. Fortunately or unfortunately, what we're talking about are projects that are going to be long-term. I mean, we could hire somebody today to handle that kind of responsibility that would retire.
Councilmembers, may I just, I think we
don't want to get in discussion right now.
This is a good opportunity to put it on the agenda.
Okay, we can discuss that later, but I don't disagree.
I think that was all he was suggesting.
All right.
Was that we
I
have a
apologize
conversation.
if I've gone
Thank
too
you.
far.
Thank you. All right, we have a motion and a second. Let's vote on adding those to the calendar. And Mr. Nickel, those are for the next council.
For the letter of authorization, we got from Alliance Building Solutions, and then we got.
No. We need, staff's going to need time to pull this together. We cannot get it for the 19th, September 2nd.
On the consent calendar for energy, ABS, is that right?
No, that's going to require a little bit of analysis before I can throw that on the agenda. So
Okay.
we have to go out for an RFP for services. So we'll bring that back on the 3rd with some analysis. Both of those items for you.
On the 3rd.
The 2nd, excuse me, the 2nd, I believe, is the first meeting in September.
Yeah, the 2nd. Wednesday, the 2nd. Mr. Nickel?
That's the earliest we can do it, huh?
Yeah, got a lot going on.
Okay, and then the focused RFP for property assessments, as Mr. Nickel had mentioned. There's a motion and a second. Members, please, let's call the roll. Ms. Rocha.
Does it require a vote? Isn't it just direction?
I personally prefer that it just be direction. If there's clearly lack of majority, that it doesn't go on. But I worry a little bit about the Brown Act, so I think it's kind of a consensus.
Okay.
Mr. Nickel raised it. If there's no terrible opposition, then the city manager knows that's something that he wants.
Okay, perfect. Council members, thank you. Ms. Ibarra, you had your hand raised, ma'am. Go ahead, please.
Yes, I just want to bring back up the issue of homelessness for our city manager. I've been asking for a couple of months already that report of what we're doing because it's not getting any better in our city. So bring a report on the homelessness task force if we have any. And also I want to find out about the ESG funds that we got recently, how the city's using those.
That will be on the next agenda on the 19th.
Okay, thank you.
And Ms. City Clerk, to clarify the request by Ms. Ibarra, we have a workshop scheduled, don't we, for homeless?
Yes, we have that on the list. I can't remember the exact date, but it is coming up.
It's forthcoming, Ms. Ibarra. If you could be patient with this, and we have a study workshop dedicated to that item.
Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. Council members, thank you. It's been a good night.
I have just a comment.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Have you gone through everybody about putting anything forward on?
We're an open book. Go ahead, Mr.
Okay.
Trent. Go ahead.
I just want to recognize the loss due to a fire of Casa Ramona, a historic location in this community. I think we all know about it, and we send out our sincere sympathy for the loss of that facility. And it's something that is historic to our community. And if we can in some way, and I don't know who gets this task, but if there's in some way that we're able to help facilitate the rebuilding of that facility, the support of them, whatever. Again, I'm not suggesting we take it over and rebuild it or whatever, but it is historic, and it's historic to our history of the city of San Bernardino. It goes back to the 20s. So that's all. I wanted to recognize it and pass along my sympathy for the loss of that in that community.
Also, let me add also that it was a very valuable senior center.
Okay. Thank you.
And we got the west side lost that.
So
Okay.
I'm not asking for any motion or any action.
No, we hear you loud and clear, Councilman. We got it. Thank you. All right, this meeting is adjourned. We thank you, city council members, for your investment and time, and we thank you. And we thank our city staff. We appreciate you, and we thank you. This meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.